The deck of the Silverwing rolled gently beneath Daenerys's bare feet. The planks warm from the afternoon sun, yet slick with the tang of salt. Sails the color of winter clouds strained against their lines, beating softly like the slow wing beats of an enormous swan. Each gust sent shivers through the rigging and a hush along the hull, as though the ship itself were drawing breath. Beyond the rail, the sunset sea glittered, a blazing mirror that reached toward the vanishing point of the world. There, past the rim of every known map, lay a darkness thick with rumor, empty oceans, demon-haunted isles, a tumbling cascade of water that poured forever into the sky. She stared westward until her eyes watered. The wind coming off the waves smelled wilder than the airs of Dragonstone or Meereen, sharper than the spiced breezes of Karth, untouched by human hearth or harbor. Promised absolution, promised forgetting. Behind her, footfalls, measured, respectful, approached along the quarterdeck. Daenerys did not turn. She knew the rhythm of the steps, cautious yet insistent, like a tutor walking among restless pupils. "Your Grace, do not call me that," she murmured. "Not here." Tyrion Lannister halted beside her. The wind plastered his pale hair against his cheek, and his fine boots creaked as the Silverwing lurched over a trough. "Old habits," he said, "are the most tenacious weeds in the garden of the mind." He folded his hands behind his back. "If not your Grace, then what? Captain? Lady? Storm Dancer? Daenerys will do. Plain as porridge." His mouth twisted as if tasting something bittersweet. "Very well, Daenerys." He released the name carefully, the way a man might set a fragile glass upon a stone table. "The crew grow curious. They have followed you farther west than any sane mariner. Yet they wonder if you will speak to them." She watched a long cresting swell. Drogon shadowed it, black wings chasing silver foam. "What would you have me say?" "That our compass has not spun mad. That you have not taken leave of reason. I have taken leave of claims." Her voice softened, yet the edge remained. "The Iron Throne has devoured enough generations. Let it choke on the next." Tyrion's gaze flicked to the horizon where the sun sank fat and bruised. "A throne cannot behead you now, nor can it absolve you. But a choice, once made, still demands reckoning." She felt the weight of his small eyes upon her profile but did not flinch. Her palm pressed the warm wood of the rail as though it might translate the thrum of the ship into her blood. "I have reckoned. I have counted every corpse." The dwarf leaned closer, lowering his voice. "And have you counted the living who steer this vessel because they believe in you?" Daenerys closed her eyes. She saw gray-clad, unsullied stacking shields upon the quay of Dragonstone. She saw the last of her Dothraki, restless on unfamiliar planks, clinging to the promise of open plains across the sea. She saw Jon Snow upon the beach, refusing her hand yet begging with his eyes for something neither of them could name. She had turned away from him, from them all, and stepped aboard. None had stopped her. Perhaps that was mercy. "I will speak," she said at last, though the thought hollowed her ribs like a sudden sickness. "But not today." Tyrion's shoulders eased, surrendering to the inevitable. "When dragons wish to molt, no cage will confine them. Very well. I shall tell the men their queen, their Daenerys, will address them when the wind shifts." He bowed neither deep nor long. Respect, tempered by the weary affection of co-conspirators. As he withdrew, the sky reddened. Droplets of copper bled across distant clouds. Drogon skimmed the mast, talons clipping air, his roar scattering gulls before it reached her in a warm gust. The Silverwing tilted, and the horizon dipped like a great platter. Somewhere below decks Regal and Viserion rustled, uneasy in their iron-latticed holds, though she could taste their thoughts as surely as the salt on her lips. Sky, sky, fly. Soon, she promised them, and perhaps she lied. Night blanketed the ocean with a shawl of indigo velvet speckled by frozen embers. Lanterns along the foresail spars bobbed like captive fireflies. Beyond their glow, the sea dissolved into blackness so complete it seemed a second heaven inverted beneath them. Daenerys stood at the prow, wrapped in a cloak sewn from the remnants of her Targaryen banners. The three-headed dragon still writhed upon the fabric, crimson tongues licking at ragged edges. Yet the sigil felt quaint now, a boast from another life. She let the fabric fall open. The wind teased cold fingers across the swell of her stomach, the inside of her elbow, places no armor would have dared. The ship groaned, plowing a furrow through the starlit plain. Footsteps again, but smaller, lighter, pacing between shadows. A face emerged from gloom. Young, burn-scarred, eyes wide as moons, Harrag, once a cabin lad aboard a Pentoshi trader, rescued from pirates, now one of hers. He carried a brass astrolabe, its rings shimmering. "Mill, my lady," he corrected hastily. "The stars tilt. The helmsman says we drift south by a quarter." "Correct him, then." Her tone softened the command. "Show him how the claw matches the constellation." Harrag bit his lip. "He listens poorly to a boy. Then he will listen to me through you." She crouched so her eyes met his. "I do not own the law of the sky, Harrag. The sky owns itself. Learn it, speak its tongue, and men will hear." The boy exhaled, relief mingling with something fiercer. Pride, perhaps, and hurried off. She straightened, muscles aching with an exhaustion deeper than flesh. John would have knelt, would have shouldered every burden she now bore alone. She saw him sometimes in dream, standing knee-deep in snow, Longclaw planted before him like a gravestone, eyes black with regret. But dawn always burned him away. She lifted her hand, palm outward, fingers splayed, a gesture that once calmed her dragons. Above, Drogon folded his wings and descended until his breath set her cloak fluttering. His gaze, molten and bottomless, fixed upon her. "Why here?" he seemed to ask. "Why stillness when the world is wide?" She pressed thoughts toward him like coins through silk. "Because I must learn who I am beyond fire and throne." Drogon rumbled, uncertain. Then, with a sweep of pinioned night, he rose again. Days amassed like beads upon an abacus, worn smooth by repetition, identical yet not. Morning. Gull cry, deck scrubbed, porridge ladled. Afternoon. Tyroshi sailors muttering over tangled lines. Dothraki sparring in tight circles between coils of rope. Tyrion reading a leather-bound volume on the nature of tides. Evening. Rhaegal's claws scraping the hold, the animals longing echoing through oak. Night. Daenerys pacing the quarterdeck alone until stars paled. Storms came, too. The first announced itself with a bruise-colored dome on the western horizon. Sailcloth snapped, masts shivered. The Silverwing fought each wave like a stag lunging through snowdrifts. Rain hammered so hard it blurred her vision into streaks. Lightning bared Drogon's skeleton in strobe. Wings, spine, talons, fangs, then vanished. The crew cried to foreign gods. She clung to the rail and laughed, rain mixing with tears, because terror tasted like the first clean water after drought. When morning finally cracked a slit in the clouds, the deck was strewn with splinters and a single broken spar. Two sailors lay sheeted in canvas, faces waxed still. Daenerys ordered them sewn into hammocks and lowered to the sea, whispered Valyrian words that tasted ancient and metallic. Loss, she noted, felt different here, less political, more personal. There would be no ravens to carry these men's names to thrones or castles. The ocean alone would remember them. Each night thereafter the crew gathered at the mainmast to hear her speak. At first she offered simple comfort, stories of suns that rose again, of dragons forged in the black moon's shadow, of paths that looped upon themselves like the Ouroboros eating its tail. But gradually, at Tyrion's subtle urging, she found herself recounting memories of conquest. Astapor's burning chains, Meereen's great pyramid crowned by Drogon's ruthless silhouette, the night she sailed from Slaver's Bay on ships newly christened with the broken collars of tyrants. She spoke not to glorify but to release. By giving the memories voice, she felt them loosen, like thick knots unspooling under deft fingers. The listeners wept or cheered in turn, yet each tale ended on the same note. And still I journey westward, for the map does not end where parchment phrase. Weeks passed. The water changed. Richer, almost sweet, as though some unseen river emptied into the vastness. Clumps of weed floated past, veined in iridescent green, unlike any found in the summer seas. Fish surfaced at night that glowed pale as ghost candles, and one dawn Harrag swore he saw a whale larger than the silverwing, its eye round as a window, regarding them with calm speculation before descending into gloom. Daenerys kept a journal in cramped Valyrian script, documenting each marvel. She did so partly to anchor herself, partly to quiet Tyrion's incessant requests for record-keeping. If we sail off the edge of the world, at least posterity will have the courtesy of reading how. Upon the thin vellum she charted wind patterns and water taste, sketched a new constellation she named Sister's Torch, and counted the phases of the moons, both the pale and the red, observing they waxed and waned a day slower than in Blackwater Bay. Yet for all that novelty, old ghosts still walked her dreams. Slavers' whips cracking, Quoro and Aggo singing of grass seas beneath alien skies, Ser Yora's rasping counsel, Grey Worm's stoic salute. She dreamt of King's Landing, a hive of ashen walls and broken bells, though in this dream Drogon never arrived. The city burned by its own secrets until sea breezes scattered the embers. She would wake trembling, fingers clawed in the blanket, whispering no more bells like an incantation. Tyrion found her one dawn leaning over the rail, knuckles white. "You wage war nightly," he observed. "Have you considered parley? With whom? The dead. Parley is less about the adversary and more about the aggressor." He eyed her sidelong. "Sometimes we negotiate with ourselves." Her laugh cracked like thin ice. "And what terms should I offer myself, my wise hand? Lay down your crown of iron memories. Wear instead a circlet of tomorrow." He poured a trickle of arbor gold into 2 tin cups, handing her one. "To tomorrow, then." She sipped the wine. Rough, sea-shaken, but warm. Tomorrow is but a coin that keeps rolling. Let us chase it. On the 58th day, the lookout cried from the nest, "Land! Land beyond the mist." At first Daenerys saw nothing but a bank of gray rising like smoke. Then Drogon shrieked overhead and arrowed toward the haze. The mist parted, unveiling jagged columns of stone protruding from the water like the ribcage of some drowned god. Beyond those spires coiled a strip of dark sand and, farther still, a dense forest so green it seemed to ooze life. The Silverwing dropped anchor a bowshot from shore. Longboats splashed down. Daenerys boarded the first, accompanied by Tyrion, Harrag clutching his astrolabe, and 5 Unsullied whose spears gleamed. Drogon circled above. Rhaegal and Viserion remained caged, their roars echoing through hull timbers until the sea itself shuddered. The beach smelled of resin and rain-soaked moss. Footprints of strange fowl dotted the sand, 3-clawed, webbed. Tyrion stooped to examine a shard of black obsidian half buried at the titterline, brows arching. "Dragonglass," he muttered. "The world keeps its own jokes." Daenerys walked until the surf lapped at her ankles, cool as river stones. Across silent trees she sensed no rooftops, no columned temples, no smoke from cook fires. An untouched continent or island, untethered from the histories that had shaped her. "You're Daenerys," Tyrion corrected himself. "What do you see?" "Possibility." Her voice trembled not with fear but with something perilously akin to joy. She knelt, allowing waves to braid her hair around her wrists. A place without thrones. Behind them, the crew began unloading barrels of fresh water, tangling anchors in rock pools, calling to one another in 6 tongues. Already a village of tents sprouted along the treeline. Human enterprise seated itself like burrs upon velvet. Daenerys rose. She would explore soon, would send scouting parties inland, would catalog flora and measure rivers. But for now she simply listened, to wind weaving through leaves, to the hush of tides, to Drogon's distant, ever-guarding bellow. She breathed. For the first time in memory, the breath did not taste of conflagration. Night fires dotted the beach. Around them the crew passed flasks, trading stories of home and speculation of what beasts roamed the forest. Daenerys sat apart on a driftwood log, cloak pulled tight as a predator's gaze. Tyrion approached carrying 2 bowls of stew fragrant with unfamiliar herbs. "They call it rookfish," he said. named for the beak. He offered her the bowl. She tasted. The flesh was firm, sweet, reminiscent of crab and almond. "Good," she admitted. "Good." He prodded the sand with a stick, drawing lazy spirals. "We should speak of tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Indeed, the crew will want to know if we settle or sail farther. The dragons." He glanced skyward. Drogon perched upon a basalt column like a gargoyle, eyes ember-bright. "We'll want sky." Daenerys laid her bowl aside. "Let them have it. To stay, then, for a while. Not a kingdom, an anchorage. A place to mend sails before the next wind." Tyrion's brows knitted. "And if the wind never arrives? Then we learn to breathe this air." He chuckled, more warmth than mirth. "Even dragons must roost." She touched the hilt of a dagger at her belt, feeling the cool steel, the etched sigils worn nearly smooth. "I will bury this," she said. "The dagger, the past." She watched the surf crawl forward, erasing footprints. "If I carry it farther, it will carve me hollow." Tyrion drew a slow breath. "I once told a man that every time we deal in our vices we pay a little iron price. Perhaps you have paid enough." She did not answer. Instead she rose, knife in hand, and walked to the waterline. Kneeling, she dug with trembling fingers until a shallow pit yawned. Into it she placed the dagger, the shards of her old banners, a coil of red silk braided in myrrh, and a small wooden carving of a throne that Jon had given her upon Dragonstone. One by one, relics of ambition. She covered them, patted the mound flat, and stood. The tide kissed the sand, retreated, kissed again, like a mother soothing a fevered child. Her throat tightened. Behind her Tyrion said nothing, yet she felt his presence, a sentinel of contradictions. Somewhere farther down the beach she heard laughter. Harrag teaching a Dothraki how to trace constellations in the smoke of the campfire. Daenerys Targaryen closed her eyes. The night air smelled of pine and brine, and in that scent she tasted the shape of new myths. She imagined children born who would know only this western shore, who would braid seashells into their braids and carve new songs about the mother of dragons who crossed the death water and asked no crown in return. She lifted her face to the stars, letting the hush become her baptism. In the distance Drogon's roar folded into the shush of waves until both were one heartbeat. She exhaled, a sound half sigh, half promise. Tomorrow could wait. Tonight, at last, belonged to no one's throne. The morning sun poured gold upon the shoreline, shattering in gleams off tide pools. Daenerys woke beneath linen canvas to the smell of roasting rookfish and the sound of axes biting into timber. Already the encampment bustled. Sails drying on driftwood frames, barrels rolled inland, new paths hacked through undergrowth. She stepped outside barefoot, toes sinking into cool sand. Grey Worm approached stiff-backed, helm beneath one arm. He had come aboard at the last harbor only reluctantly, honoring a vow to guard her wherever she walked. Now his gaze swept the camp, noting every vulnerability. "Commander," she greeted. Old habits of war died stubbornly. "Khaleesi," he answered, using a title she no longer claimed. He offered a small wooden bowl containing crimson berries. "From Forest Edge. Birds eat them. We tested. Safe." She tasted one. Sweet then tart, the juice staining her tongue scarlet. "Name them." He seemed confused. "These fruits need a name," she said. "Choose one." Grey Worm considered the berry rolling between his fingers. "Unsullied's Rest," he said at last. She smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. "Let that be their name." As the sun climbed, Daenerys walked the perimeter surveying the newborn settlement. She found Tyrion standing at the edge of a freshwater stream that tumbled from cliffs inland. He held his wineskin beneath the flow, lips pursed. "A river with no map," he proclaimed. "Tastes the same as any river drawn in ink. Does it?" She cupped water in her palms, sipped, cool, faintly metallic, alive. Tyrion corked his skin. "What will you call this place? Every harbor begs a name." She watched light dapple mossy stones, heard insects drone like distant zither.
Nusa.
Valyrian for? Never again. The word rolled from her mouth like prayer. Soft, irrevocable. He nodded, eyes bright.
Nusa.
A promise etched upon the emptiness of the map. Throughout the following week, they erected shelters of sapling frames and sailcloth. Daenerys helped fetch water, her once silk hands blistering on rough bucket handles. She learned the bark of an evergreen that bled resin sweet enough to chew. She learned the call of a pale thrush that sang only at dusk. Each discovery felt like weaving a thread into a garment no one had worn before. At dusk on the 8th day, screams erupted from the treeline. Unsullied spears bristled as 2 scouts burst into camp, wild-eyed, babbling of shapes among the branches. Moments later, the shapes emerged. Tall figures cloaked in woven reeds, faces painted in swirling patterns of blue and white. They carried bows strung with sinew and long knives of black stone. Silence settled like frost. Daenerys stepped forward before steel could sing. She raised empty hands, palms outward. Tyrion hissed her name, but she ignored him. The strangers paused, inscrutable. Drogon's roar echoed from his basalt perch. The painted warriors flinched yet did not flee. A woman among them, taller than Daenerys by a hand, her hair braided with shells, spoke in a liquid tongue that rippled like river light. Daenerys caught no meaning, but the cadence reminded her of Dothraki riders chanting to their horses under the moon. She answered in High Valyrian, soft, melodic, then tried rusty Giscari, halting summer tongue. The woman listened, impassive. At last Daenerys knelt, drawing a circle in the sand between them. Inside she placed a single berry of Unsullied's rest. She pushed it across the line. The woman regarded the offering, then crouched, laid a stone knife beside the berry, and slid both back. Exchange. Parley. The next hours unfolded wordlessly. Gestures traded, objects shared. Axes for cured meat, brass cups for rope plaited of silvery grass. By moonrise, the strangers melted back into forest shadows, leaving the camp humming with nervous relief. Tyrion exhaled a shaky laugh. You realize, of course, that, you may have just offended them terribly by gifting berries the color of war. Perhaps, she said. She held the stone knife, its edge so sharp it parted a hair. Or perhaps they measure trust in blades. He massaged his temples. Let us hope their scales of trust do not tip toward our throats come dawn. Sleep eluded her. She wandered the shore, mind weaving possibilities. Independence demanded alliance. Sanctuary required exchange. Could she build a friendship uncluttered by thrones? Could peoples meet without chain or collar? She reached the shallow grave and knelt. The tide had not yet claimed it. She brushed away sand until the dagger's pommel peaked like a dull star. She touched the metal but left it buried. The past need not be exhumed to testify. Above, the red moon hung swollen. Drogon's silhouette crossed it, wings cleaving the blood-colored disk, then vanished into cloud. She closed her eyes, felt his joy of flight. In that moment she understood. She need not choose between land and sky. She need only choose forward. A whisper of wings disturbed her reverie. Opening her eyes, she saw Regal gliding low over the surf, freed somehow from the hold. Unsullied torches flickered in alarm. But Daenerys lifted both arms in silent command. The green dragon banked, circled, then landed upon the wet sand, steam curling from nostrils. His gaze, gold-slit, questioning, met hers. Yes, she told him. Here we begin anew. She touched his scaly neck, and in that pulse she felt the world unlock a door without handle or hinge. A door one could walk through only by surrendering the weight carried thus far. Morning rolled bright and wind-washed. The painted forest people returned, this time bearing woven baskets heavy with roots and pale fruits shaped like tears. They laid them upon the sand. Daenerys met them with gifts of copper pots and a single young goat for breeding. This time the tall woman spoke a single word, pointing toward the inland cliffs. Valor. Daenerys repeated it. The woman smiled, revealing teeth filed slightly at the tips. She touched Daenerys's chest above the heart, then her own, repeating, Valor. A name, Daenerys realized. Perhaps her own. She tapped her breast. Daenerys. The woman repeated, Daenerys, lips shaping unfamiliar sound. They laughed together, barrier cracked. So began the slow weaving of understanding. Nights gathered around driftwood fires where gestures became grammar. Days spent mapping river fords with reed cloak guides. An expedition inland where they discovered ruins. Smooth black walls half devoured by vine, their angles uncanny, as though cast for gods rather than men. Tyrion wept to see them, claiming scholars of Old Town would pine to their graves for such riddles. Throughout it all, Daenerys moved as both leader and listener. She set no crown upon her head, yet decisions braided toward her like tributaries. She judged disputes over water rights, ordered new watchtowers built, and decreed that any tree felled must seed two more, wisdom gifted by reed-cloak elders who called forests the bones of the sky. Months slipped by, measured in dragon molts, in harvests of tearfruit, in the birth of the first child to cry beneath New York Tsar's thatched roofs. They named him Vero after the western wind that had carried them. Daenerys held the infant, felt his soft weight anchor her to this soil. Yet restlessness still fluttered in her breast like a caged finch. The sea never ceased its calling hush. One twilight she climbed the basalt spire where Drogon perched, the wind whipping her braids. She gazed westward where water kissed sunfire. Perhaps beyond lay further wonders. Perhaps nothing. But the map inside her heart had grown blank spaces again, whispering invitation. She descended and called counsel. Around the long fire sat Tyrion, Grey Worm, Harrag now grown lanky, Valar the reed-cloak chief, and others whose names had twined into the history of this place. I will sail again, Daenerys told them. The firelight painted her face copper. But New York Tsar will stand. It belongs to those who believe in beginning. Silence, then Tyrion rose, wine cup untouched. Maps must expand, else they become cages. But promise you will return, so our stories do not cease in telling. I promise. She felt the words root in her marrow. Grey Worm spoke next. Unsullied will guard New York Tsar. We owe debt to Sky Mother. Valar placed a hand upon Daenerys' shoulder, eyes reflecting flame. She spoke a sentence that Tyrion, now fluent, translated, "The river that seeks the sea leaves fish for the forest." Daenerys bowed her head. Then let the river run. Preparations began anew. Sails mended, hulls tar-sealed, provisions gathered, dried rookfish, tearfruit, casks of river water sweet as memory. The Blackstone ruins gifted 3 keels of a queer lightness, perfect for outriggers. She named them Promise, Wanderer, and Snow. On the day of departure, New York Tsar's people gathered along the beach. Children tossed shells that clattered like bells. Dragons swooped overhead, their shadows flickering across cheering faces. Daenerys stood at the prow of Promise, hair unbound, wearing no crown save sunlight. She looked back upon homes rising amid green, smoke curling from hearths that would tell stories of her after she passed beyond horizon. Tyrion raised a goblet in farewell, shouting, "May your tomorrow never empty." Grey Worm saluted, spear striking shield. Valar lifted a carved staff in blessing. Daenerys turned her face toward the western glare. Drogon roared, wings catching the updraft. The anchor lifted, the tide embraced. Sails blossomed with wind. As Promise slipped into the wide blue, the shore diminished until huts were grains, people pinpricks, dragons cinder motes against sky. Yet the beat of her heart echoed with each splash of the oars, a litany of names, of places, of beginnings unending. She breathed in the great salt emptiness and exhaled a single word, greater than throne or crown, older than fear, forward. A gull's low cry pealed across the dawn as Promise creaked through a rolling fog the color of pearl. The deck smelled of damp canvas and tar. The hush of water against hull was so soft Daenerys felt she floated between 2 halves of the same sky. Around her the crew moved quietly, voices kept to murmurs lest they shatter whatever fragile spell draped the ship. She stood at the bow, palms spread on the slick railing, while fine beads of mist gathered in her hair like dew on silk. Somewhere ahead lay a horizon invisible to every chart in Old Town's vaults. The mere thought made her blood hum, a secret drum beneath her ribs. The fog thinned by degrees, and shapes resolved, broad fins breaking the surface, slow as drifting banners. Gliding creatures followed the vessel, luminous veins pulsing beneath translucent skin. Harrag, now nearly a man in height but still colt-limbed and curious, leaned over the gunwale, mouth open. Their glow painted his cheeks azure. Tyrion joined Daenerys, lifting a spyglass to a single slate-blue eye. "I've read tales of fish that carry lanterns in their bellies," he said, turning the brass tube until a bead of light blossomed in its glass. "Yet none this large. A man could ride such a beast from Dorne to Lys." "Perhaps they ride themselves," she answered. Watching their procession, she felt an ache, a yearning unnameable, part homesickness, part hunger for everything not yet known. She closed her eyes, listening to the recess of her mind where Westerosi memories still fluttered. Jon's voice drifted there sometimes, hoarse and earnest, a wind trapped in stone corridors. "You are my queen." She had let it go once, as one releases a hawk to the sky, knowing love could not root where crowns sank their iron hooks. Yet now, in the hush before new worlds, the remembrance throbbed softer, wound healing into weathered scar. The ship rolled beneath a sudden, unplaceable current. Crewmen braced. Daenerys's eyelids snapped open as the prow lifted, then swung sharply starboard. Fog swirled, pulling away like torn silk to reveal a vast, turning mirror. A whirlpool, dark mouth yawning, ringed by pale froth. In its eye green light shimmered as though some unseen jewel spun beneath the water. Helmsman Zacco cursed in Dothraki, hauling the wheel. The sails cracked, canvas straining. Ropes shrieked through salted blocks. Drogon, high aloft, screamed an answering challenge. The whirlpool answered with a thunderous suck, dragging promise towards its hungry spiral. Daenerys ran aft, voice cutting across the din. "Trim the topsail, slack the foresheet, give her wind to slide." Hands obeyed even before understanding, the unspoken obedience born of months at sea. Tyrion struggled to the rail, spyglass forgotten, staring into the gyre. Spray salted his beard. Then the sea exploded. A column of water, wide as the great September's dome, erupted at the whirlpool's center, pelting deck and mast with stinging hail. From its crest burst something immense. Dagger scales black and green, fins serrated like swords. It rose entire lengths above the mast, arcing across the void to crash behind the ship in a cascade that rocked timbers loose. Deeper growls followed, echoing beneath. Crew screamed prayer and profanity alike. Unsullied braced shields against flying spars. Daenerys planted her stance, hair whipping. In the chaos Drogon plunged, his roar a bolt of living rage. Black wings hammered the wind, fire coiled in his throat. He banked once, twice, then released flame so white-hot it bleached the fog, carving a radiant path across the whirl's crest. Water hissed into steam. The spiral quivered, momentum faltering. A second gout of dragonfire seared the outer rim, and with a shudder like mountains grinding under glaciers, the vortex loosened its grip. Promise lurched free, keel-slapping waves. The luminous fish scattered, their ghostly bodies streaking away into gloom. Above, Drogon circled triumphantly, ember sparks drifting from his maw. Daenerys exhaled slow, the taste of smoke and brine mingling on her tongue. The crew answered with ragged cheers, Tyrion's voice loudest among them. A brittle laughter, half hysteria, half giddy relief. When calm at last returned, Harrag approached clutching a water-swollen notebook. "The current shifted just before the whirl opened," he said, eyes bright despite terror's aftershocks. "See." He showed her a quick sketch of arrowed lines, overlapping spirals. As if two tides met from opposing moons. Daenerys admired his studious bravery. "Mark it well," she said. "One day scholars will argue whether such things exist. We will answer them." She looked aft, where the sea now lay innocently slumbering, hiding every trace of the storm that almost devoured them. We will answer them with living memory. Night brought uneasy quiet. Lanterns swung across deck, each wick haloed by lingering mist. Daenerys found Tyrion in the stern cabin, seated before a chart he was drawing himself. Crude outlines of newly found eddies, islands rumored by prior scouting, distances measured in half-understood stars. His quill tapped the parchment like a restless foot. "Do you know," he said without turning, "when first I set sail with you from Meereen, I told myself I followed a woman chained to destiny. I was wrong. You carry no chain. It is the world that tries to tether you." She poured him a measure of warmed grog, then one for herself. Chains, destinies, thrones, all rust in salt air. She sipped, letting the spice ignite her throat. "Sometimes I feel I have outlived even my own purpose." Tyrion snorted. "The dead seldom wrestle whirlpools or barter with sky-eyed tribes. Purpose is not a crown, Daenerys. It is the stride beneath your feet." She turned that over in silence until exhaustion pressed her eyelids heavy. "Wake me at first light," she said. "If the sea decides to swallow us again, I would prefer a witness." He raised his cup in somber salute. In her hammock she dreamed. A door carved of bone opened onto Dragonstone's throne room. Yet instead of obsidian walls she saw forest trunks spiraling upward, their leaves hammered bronze by sunset. Rhaegal perched on a branch, smaller now, eyes curious. Jon stood below, but when she stepped toward him her boots sank into damp loam, and roots curled around her ankles. He reached, touched her cheek with one snow-cooled hand. "Forgive." His lips shaped the word. Behind him a horizon bent west once more. She woke before dawn and climbed the companionway. The sky was a dazzling arch of indigo, bright with countless unfamiliar stars. Harrag knelt upon the deck, sextant in hand, sighting angles. He startled when she approached, then grinned shyly. "I found a third moon," he whispered as though tales of Essos might summon dragons again. "Smaller than the others, but there, see?" He pointed to a faint pinprick trailing the twin moons like a silver tear. Daenerys squinted until she found it. Wonder stirred. "Perhaps it was always there," she murmured. "Waiting for dreamers." 2 weeks later the sea warmed to bath temperate. Flying fish leapt in glittering arcs. Each sunset bled violet and vermilion. Yet a pall of unease crept through the crew. Quiet glances at Rhaegal and Viserion, now freed from hold to coil about the masts at night. Drogon roost seldom, hunting beyond sight until his absence felt like a missing drumbeat in a march. Supplies waned faster than planned. Tearfruit bruised black, rookfish schools slipped into deeper trenches. Tyrion rationed wine with the ruthlessness of a pit boss. Dothraki muttered about omens. Tyroshi sailors carved charms into railings. The Unsullied, though statues to the eye, shifted weight on parade more often, helmets tilting ever so slightly with nerves. On the 26th morning, Harrag collapsed while taking chronometer readings. Sweat beaded his brow, though the breeze remained mild. Grey Worm bore him to the shade where his pulse raced like a trapped finch. By dusk, 3 more crewmen shivered with fever. Daenerys gathered healers, Tyroshi herbwives, a former maester's apprentice, but remedies failed as dawn rolled crimson. Panic whispered. She walked the deck, offering water, wiping brows herself, ignoring protestations that queens must not sully royal fingers. She was no queen here. She was the fire's steward, the voyage's promise. That night she sat beside Harrag's pallet, torch guttering. His eyelids fluttered. "Cold," he murmured, though his flesh burned. Daenerys wrapped her cloak around him. "Hold the stars, little astrolabe," she whispered. "They will hold you back." He tried to smile. Breath rattled. Storm clouds gathered by morning, bruised purple on every quarter. Tyrion met her at the helm, hair whipped across his brow. "Disease spreads faster than rumor," he said. "We need fresh water, new game, herbs unknown to our kits." He pointed ahead where low shapes surfaced through rain haze, an archipelago of stark granite pillars draped in jungle vines, geysers puffing white steam into swollen sky. Land, Daenerys breathed. Relief lanced her nerves, tempered by dread of the unknown. She gave orders. Quarantine the 6 starboard. Post unsullied sentries to restrict contact until water sources tested. The crew tightened lines with renewed vigor. They could smell salvation in wet Earth's promise. Promise threaded through towering pillars like a needle sewing destiny. Hot springs burst from cliff faces, pouring milky rivulets into the sea. Sulfur laced the air. Birds of impossible hue chattered in branches. One flashed wings of green-gold scales. Wet warmth settled like a blanket across shoulders. They anchored in a sheltered lagoon. Dories ferried hunting parties ashore while Tyrion oversaw purification of a waterfall pool, mixing lime from ship stores. Daenerys led a small group inland, Drogon shadowing overhead, his heat warding mosquitoes. Within a mile they found an abundance. Roots shaped like twisted hearts, mushrooms luminous blue beneath overhangs, vines sagging with clusters of ruby spheres. Yet what drew Daenerys to stillness was not flora but structure. A series of basalt columns sculpted into archways, half swallowed by creeping ferns. The style echoed the ruins near New York Sar, but grander, 2-story vaults, lintels etched with spirals resembling waves. Tyrion arrived panting, eyes aflame. "Another ghost city," he whispered. "Perhaps all this sea was once bridged by one empire, now naught but moss-eaten bone." Daenerys touched a carving. 3 serpents interlocked, chasing one another's tails. She traced their path, heart skittering. Serpents or dragons? The stone offered no answer. From deeper in the ruins came a hush so total she felt ears ring. Rhaegal landed atop a shattered obelisk and cocked his head, nostrils flaring. Viserion followed, wings stirring dust. Drogon alighted last, folding them beneath a half-collapsed dome. Their presence seemed accepted by the silent stones, as though they belonged. Grey worms signaled. Scouts returned hauling bundles of green stems with sweet smell. Herbwives say boil with water. Fever break. Hope flared. They gathered armfuls, raced for shore to steep decoctions. Night fell thick with humidity. Fires crackled along beach, cauldrons bubbling. Daenerys carried the first bowl herself to Harrag. He sipped, bitter liquid staining tongue. His eyes closed, breath softened. Dawn showed sweat cooled, fever ebbing. Across the deck sick men stirred easier. A cheer rose, tears glimmering in morning sun. They remained anchored weeks. Crews mended sails, foraged fruit, mapped tidal channels. Unsullied patrolled ruins, reporting strange scratches on stone, claw marks deep as a man's arm. No creature was sighted, yet nights sometimes echoed with distant, flute-like calls. Daenerys spent hours among mossy halls, feeling vibrations in her bones, as though ghosts hummed lullabies of lost ages. One dusk she found a terrace overlooking the lagoon, its balustrade carved into intertwining waves. She sat cross-legged, letting fading light wash her. Tyrion joined, bearing parchment and quill. "Hard as it is to believe," he said, "my ink dwindles faster than our wine. I may be forced to compose with soot." She smiled faintly. "Ink may fade. Memory does not." He sat beside her. "Memory can warp. Better to trap it on parchment so future fools may misinterpret it in endlessly entertaining fashion." "Why record all this?" she asked, tone gentle but edged by genuine curiosity. "Westeros will never see these pages. Perhaps not. Perhaps someday New York Tsar's children will. Or yours." The quill stilled. "Have you considered that possibility?" For a heartbeat she heard bells, those cursed bells, and saw ash falling like gray rain. She forced the vision away. "I have considered little beyond each horizon." She traced the balustrade pattern. "If I bear children, let them inherit skies unshadowed by thrones." Tyrion dipped head, silver hair catching last sunbeam. "A finer inheritance than most infants find." He hesitated. "There is talk among the crew. Not descent," he added quickly, "but question. Dragons grow restless. They feel their world expand faster than ours. Some fear they'll chart their own course soon and leave us adrift. Daenerys followed his gaze to where Drogon soared, black silhouette crossing twin moons. Dragons are neither captives nor steeds. They choose. If they fly beyond reach, I will thank them for every mile they lent me. Still, Tyrion said, men aboard wonder what becomes of a voyage if its compass decides the journey is done. She considered. Then men aboard must learn to be their own compass. Wind lifted her braid, twining it with jungle scent. Our path cannot hinge on wings alone. During the 3rd month ashore, Dothraki scouts returned breathless. A settlement inland, but not stone ruins. Living folk, smoke rising from huts of woven bark, music faint like distant drums. Daenerys assembled a party. Tyrion, Grey Worm, 2 healers, and Vaelor, who had remained by her side since the earlier island. They carried gifts: goat cheese, a copper kettle, beads carved from tearfruit seeds. They trekked through dense foliage dripping with morning rain. Sun shafts pierced canopy, painting spears of white across ferns. At midday they reached a clearing where dozens of structures stood, domes sealed with resin, each crowned by chimney vents puffing aromatic gray smoke. People emerged, skin-deep umber, hair braided with bone discs, eyes set like bright coals. They wore woven tunics dyed in gradient greens that mimicked leaves, making them fade into jungle at will. Silence charged the space, a bowstring pulled to trembling. Daenerys stepped forward, palms up, remembering the berry exchange on New York Sar. She knelt and placed the copper kettle upon moss, then rolled beads across ground. The nearest figure, a woman bearing twin scars down her cheeks, approached. She knelt in mirror, laying a bundle of feathers colored in impossible shifting hues. She touched her heart, spoke a single word, Kishai. Daenerys repeated, tapping her own chest. Daenerys. She gestured to companions. Each offered name. The jungle people smiled, a ripple passing through ranks. They led the party into the village. Smoke vents exhaled spices thick with clove and root. Children watched, half-hidden, daring then darting away with giggles. Grey Worm's stance remained ready yet relaxed. Inside the central dome, Daenerys ducked beneath an arch where hanging beads chimed subtle notes. The interior glowed with amber pitch torches, walls painted in murals. Serpents coiled around suns, birds carrying rivers in their beaks, a woman atop a dragon-shaped wave. At its center lay a shallow pool, water reflecting flickering flame. The scarred woman, Kishai's elder perhaps, dipped fingers into pool, withdrew droplets, and flicked them toward Daenerys, then toward herself. She spoke a fluid cascade of syllables. Vaelor translated slowly. She welcomes water between you so neither may thirst for understanding. Daenerys inclined her head, heart fluttering at the poetry. Talk followed in mixed gesture, Vaelor relaying. The jungle folk, called Moridi, had legends of sky lizards shaping storms. They believed the basalt archways beyond Lagoon were sleeping doors left by those who taught the first songs. They recognized Drogon's silhouette in murals older than memory. To them, Daenerys was she who follows wing, a herald of a turning age. Under the murals they shared meal. Tubers spiced, fish smoked with leaf ash, a drink of fermented sap that tingled like tiny sparks across tongue. Tyrion coughed, eyes watering, but grinned after second sip. As dusk bled into dome, Kishai produced a tablet of dark wood carved with star patterns. She traced a route spiraling west, tapping points where new moons rose. Vaelor translated, beyond 7 nests, water becomes thin air. Past that, world shows its quiet face. Tyrion murmured, thin air? Could she mean ice? Or fog so dense it floats? Daenerys considered a realm where sea turned to breath, where ships might glide across cloud. They camped alongside Moridi that night. Jungle symphonies, chirps, distant roars, rustling leaves, lulled sleep while torches painted canopy in molten gold. Daenerys dreamed. Drogon dove beneath waves, swam corridors of coral lit by starlight. At each turn doorways opened into sky again, endless loops of sea and air. She woke at dawn with conviction steel bright. West still called louder than ever. On return to Lagoon, she convened council. Crewmen listened, wary yet inspired, as she recounted Kishai's map. Some feared unknown climates. Others, emboldened by earlier survival, clamored to sail. Unsullied stood impassive, ready either way. Daenerys addressed them atop the main hatch. "We found healing greens where charts swore nothing lived," she said, voice carrying. "We shared words with folk whose tales hold whispers of our dragons. The world does not end, it unfolds. If fear commands our helm, we forfeit every sunrise." She paused, letting eyes sweep faces. "I will sail. Those who choose beach or forest shall have my blessing and half the stores. Those who choose horizon, meet at first tide." No one stepped back. Instead, Harrag raised a new banner sewn of tearfruit cloth dyed indigo. 3 white spirals upon endless blue. "For your wings, for our waves," he declared. A roar of assent followed. Provisioning began at fever pace. The Moridi gifted barrels of fermented sap and bundles of bark with medicinal oils. Kishai presented Daenerys with a cloak woven of shimmering feather scales. Its texture changed hue with each shift of light, now deep midnight, now jade. She fastened it about shoulders, humbled. Tyrion oversaw loading of ink newly derived from sepia sacs within lagoon squid. He told Daenerys, "If I am to etch the world anew, I'll need the world's own blood for ink." She squeezed his shoulder. Before departure, Daenerys visited the basalt ruin's highest spire. There she buried a small casket. Within, a lock of her silver hair, a shard of Drogon's molted scale, and the first compass that guided promise from New York Tsar. Over the shallow grave she whispered, "For the earth that steadied us." When she rose, Drogon landed behind, his great eye reflecting both moons. She placed a hand to his snout. "Ready." His rumble vibrated bones. They left the archipelago under canopies of rose-gold dawn. 3 ships sailed now, Promise, Wanderer, and Snow, each hull reinforced with hardwood from Moridi groves. Regal and Viserion took turns scouting ahead while Drogon rode thermals high enough to vanish. The wind came steady from southeast, warm but laced with distant chill as days passed, the promise of climates unseen. Harrag stood at the wheel often, learning helmcraft from Zacho while marking each star shift. He spoke excitedly of constellations winging toward a point he called the Silent Vortex, where all stellar rivers seemed to pour. Daenerys listened, fascinated and wary. The term conjured the whirlpool memory. Around the 10th day at sea, gray feathers drifted across deck though no birds flew overhead. Tyrion caught one, turning it in fingers. The vein shimmered as if dipped in quicksilver. That night the temperature dropped sharply, crew donning furs long and used. Breath smoked, yet the sea retained warmth beneath an eerie, motionless fog. It felt as though they sailed the boundary where 2 seasons negotiated territory. On dawn of the 13th day, the lookout shouted down, "Water rising!" Not surge, but ascent. Sheets of rain-fine mist lifted from surface, drawn upward toward a pale sky. Waves flattened, reflecting everything like black glass. Drogon returned, circling low. His wings stirred ripples that rolled yet never broke. Daenerys ordered sails reefed. Promise drifted near motionless, her reflection flawless beneath. She peered over the rail. Instead of one image, she saw infinite. Her face mirrored again and again beneath successive layers, each fainter, receding into impossible depth. She blinked, heart thudding. Tyrion appeared, hair rime-tipped with frost. "Thin air," he whispered, quoting Kishai. "The sea exhales itself into cloud." Harrag tested with lead line. It struck surface softly, then deeper still but returned mostly dry. "Water skin but a breath thick," he said, astonished. Beneath, emptiness beckoned. Gray worms sent a rower ahead, oars slicing silence. The dinghy skated, leaving no wake. Crewmen glimpsed shapes darting beneath a veil. Fish? Shadows? The dinghy returned unscathed. Daenerys felt visceral excitement. Here, truly, mankind had never carried crown or sword. She addressed the assembly. "We sail across mirrors. Keep faith steady, hands gentle." So began a journey across the mirror expanse. Days melted into iridescent monotony. Sunrises doubling in perfect reflection. Sunsets painting horizon above and below. Stars at night surrounded ships entirely, as though they drifted through galaxy rather than across sea. Some crew grew fearful of infinity, minds bent by endless vistas. Daenerys disciplined rest through routine. Song at dusk, shared stories at dawn, drills for muscle memory. One evening Tyrion produced a battered, unfinished volume, the story of their voyage from Dragonstone onward. He invited Harrag to add charts, Grey Worm to note discipline logs, healers to document herbs. Each added strokes until pages fluttered like bright leaves. Daenerys contributed a single paragraph. "We are neither conquerors nor pilgrims. We are the coin tossed between shores, witness to both faces, spending ourselves against the unknown." Her handwriting, once court-tutored, trembled slightly, but she made no correction. Fog returned denser. Ropes gathered crystals of hoarfrost, though the sea below glimmered with warm indigo light. Viserion landed upon mizzen, wings drooping. His breath puffed steam turned to snow-like drift. The lookout cried, "Something ahead, rising." Lanterns swung. Through Vale loomed a massive wall, smooth, faintly luminous, curving across entire horizon. Not stone nor ice, but translucence akin to the surface they sailed, lifted vertical. A whisper rippled across crew. Ships drew near until the wall towered taller than King's Landing's outer curtain. Its face captured reflections of moons, dragons, and mortal amazement. Harrag pressed palm to it from the dinghy. His handprint glowed, then faded. The wall felt neither cold nor wet. Tyrion theorized. Perhaps the sea hardened mid-climb. He chuckled dryly at own audacity. Daenerys touched surface. Strange warmth pulsed, like a heartbeat slowed. No obvious passage existed. Regal soared upward until vanishing into haze. He reappeared minutes later, banking down, eyes confused. Drogon attempted flame. Orange gout struck wall, spread like ink then dissipated without mark. Daenerys contemplated. Maps ended here, but maps were mortal inventions. She recalled Kishai's spirals. Beyond seven nests water becomes thin air. Past that world shows its quiet face. 7 nests, she murmured. Perhaps columns? Geysers? The basalt pillars of earlier islands? She counted archipelagos visited since Moridi lands, 7 clusters. After each they'd sailed into thinning sea. "This is the quiet face," she told Tyrion softly. He rubbed chin. "Then how do we greet it?" Night fell over the mirrored barrier. Campfires sparked along decks. Dragons rested uneasy. Daenerys lay under feather-scale cloak reading constellations. The silent vortex overhead glowed brighter, a small spiral of stars. A thought germinated, vortex, whirlpool, spirals, perhaps the world wrote in circles. She rose, strode to the bow, and called Drogon with a low whistle. His answer rumbled. She mounted him, cloak trailing like comet tail, and directed skyward along wall's curvature. Wind sliced sharp as Valyrian steel. They ascended until decks below shrank to toy ships within glass bowl. Higher still, fog parted to reveal the wall's crown, a lip curling inward like crest of frozen wave. Beyond it lay nothing. No ocean, no sky, only an expanse flush with pallid glow, as though dawn waited beneath paper-thin veil. Daenerys breathed awe. She urged Drogon forward. He hesitated, then glided over the rim. They entered silence deeper than vacuum. Sound died, flames stifled, yet Drogon's wings pushed through invisible resistance, each beat leaving ripples of pearlescence. Ahead, faint shapes floated, spires curved like nautilus shells, connected by bridges of gossamer light. A city hung suspended in void. Daenerys's pulse quickened. She guided Drogon across an archway broad enough for dragons to roost. No inhabitants stirred, yet energy hummed, vibrant as a temple waiting on high priest. She landed, boots resting upon surface firm yet springing like taut sailcloth. She walked. Glyphs drifted across walkway, glowing runes that rearranged with each step, dancing around her ankles like living script. She could not read them, yet sensed invitation. At a dais she stopped. Glyphs condensed, forming 3 serpents coiled, the design from island ruins. They unfurled, morphing into dragon silhouette, wings embracing a circle, then dissolved into pulsing orb atop pedestal. Daenerys reached, fingertips brushing light. Memories cascaded, dragon lords forging language from fire, children of far continents singing to storms, an unbroken song weaving water-sky flame. She saw New York Sar, the Moridi, John's silent plea, her own face rimmed by crownless sunlight. A single note thrummed, forward. She withdrew, heart thunderstruck. Returning to Drogon, she spoke a soft command. They flew back over wall to ships, landing amidst breathless crew. Tyrion hurried, eyes widening at her expression. "There is a city above the sea," she whispered, voice trembling. "Empty yet awake." He swallowed. "Then our voyage has crossed from myth to whatever comes after myth." Daenerys gathered counsel by torchlight. She described the barrier, the silent city, the runes. Debate raged. Some urged caution, others begged to witness. At last she raised hand. "The world invites us," she said, "but not as conquerors. We go as students." She chose a small delegation. Herself, Tyrion, Harrag, Grey Worm, 2 healers, and 1 Moridi elder. Rhaegal and Viserion would guard ships from above while Drogon bore the party. Morning saw the barrier reflect 3 suns as they ascended, 2 real, 1 mirrored. Dragons ferried them over rim. Crew left below watched specks rise into formless brilliance. Upon landing near dais, Tyrion gaped, laughing and weeping at once. Harrag spun slowly, sextant forgotten, eyes soaking wonder. They explored open halls where walls held stars inside crystal veins, corridors where steps produced harmonic chords. Grey Worm's disciplined stoicism cracked. He brushed runes with reverent fingertips. The elder from Moridi touched floating orbs that blossomed into forests of light, then folded again. At city's heart, they discovered a sphere of water levitating, glowing from within. In its depths, shapes swam, silhouettes of dragons large and small, serpents ringed with fire. Daenerys approached, breath shallow. The water parted, forming hollow where she reached. It did not wet her skin. Inside shimmered images. Westeros scorched, Westeros healed. New York Sar thriving wheat fields or smoldering ruin. Her own death beneath breaking ice, or old age upon jungle porch telling stories to wide-eyed children. 1,000 threads braided possibilities. Tyrion stood beside. "A mirror," he whispered. "Not of what is, but what may be." Daenerys forced gaze steady. "We choose," she said. She stepped back. The sphere closed, glow calming. Harrag pointed overhead. Constellations reorganized across domed ceiling, aligning into new pattern, 3 spirals converging on a single star. Beneath, a ramp descended into shadow. They followed, torches unneeded as walls lit from within. At corridors end, a chamber opened onto nothing. Floorless, roofless, just swirling haze. A platform jutted, etched with 3 serpents. At its edge rested an oblong device resembling twin mirrors fused back to back, framed by delicate skeletal metal. Daenerys approached. Runes ignited along its rim. She sensed will within, waiting passenger. She placed featherscale cloak across arms of frame. Device hummed, cloak billowing though no wind blew. Tyrion stared, enthralled. "A gate, or a vessel," she murmured. Haze beyond pulsed with heartbeat rhythm. Grey Worm touched her elbow, remembering duty. "Khaleesi, no crown," she reminded gently. "I walk equal among miracles." She faced company. "If this carries beyond seas to worlds unimagined, I will ride it, but I will not compel souls." She raised palm. "Choose." Harrag stepped forward first, excitement eclipsing fear. Tyrion followed, sighing. The wine of history is wasted on those who stay sober. The Moridi elder spoke, blessing in melodic syllables. Then took place. Grey Worm hesitated a breath, loyalty warring with duty to ship's defense. Then nodded, steel resolve. 2 healers remained to bear witness. Daenerys laid a hand upon device. Runes flared, mirrors shimmered to liquid silver erupting outward, forming elliptical doorway filled with starlight swirling like water. A pull, gentle yet inexorable, beckoned. She turned once, gaze falling upon Drogon perched guardian near entrance, wings mantling decks of air. She smiled. "Guard them," she said, "and fly free." Drogon's eyes glowed ember deep. He chuffed, nudged her shoulder with snout, then stepped back. Daenerys inhaled, tasting frost and flame mingled. She stepped through, light enveloped, cool and crisp, then warmth radiated as though standing before forge. Soundless wind whirled. Images flashed. Vast plains of glass, sapphire forests, a river pouring upward into constellation, towers shaped of living vines. Her feet met ground of pale crystal that yielded like memory but supported weight. She stood under sky awash with 3 moons, each different hue. The others appeared beside. Tyrion gasped, Harrag laughed, Grey Worm scanned horizon. Spear raised, Moridi elder knelt singing. Ahead sprawled new land, valleys breathing mist, mountains ringed by lightning that never struck ground. Creatures wheeled in high thermals, winged shapes golden and luminous. Tyrion exhaled a slow, joyful curse. "We have crossed beyond maps," he said, voice broken with awe. "What shall we name this?" Daenerys touched ground, feeling pulse of unfamiliar world. Names fluttered through mind. Dawn Realm, Third Sky, Quiet Face. She remembered burying dagger, vow to carry no past trappings. Names would come from those who built lives here. She lifted chin, silver hair rippling. "We walk forward," she answered simply. They stepped, leaving prints glowing with faint light before fading. Behind them the gate shimmered, tethered to mirrored sea and dragon's roar. Ahead opened horizon unbounded, fertile with possibility. Daenerys felt her heartbeat steady, a drum leading march of souls into myth's next verse. Far above, a star ignited brighter than rest, silent witness, herald to stories yet unspoken. She followed its shimmer, each stride writing tomorrow into the book of worlds. The gate closed behind them without a sound, a ripple of silver contracting to a pinprick and vanishing like a snuffed star. At once the travelers felt lighter, as though gravity here drew them at a gentler slant, letting every breath fill deeper, every step land softer. Air carried the scent of crushed mint and distant rain. Above, 3 moons traced uneven arcs across a wine-dark sky, one burnished copper, one pearl white, the smallest a slip of green. Their mingled glow painted the land in shifting hues that slid from rose to viridian to blue each time a cloud passed overhead. They stood upon a terrace of translucent stone that seemed to drink starlight and return it as a faint inner radiance. Ahead ran a vast plain furred with silver grass swaying in slow waves. In the distance, jagged mountains reared like frozen thunderheads, their peaks banded by crackling rings of quiet lightning. Between plain and peaks sprawled a forest that shimmered as though every leaf were hammered metal catching moonbeams. Here and there, the canopies parted to reveal rivers that fell upward instead of down, their streams lifting in spirals toward the heavens before DSP, ursing into mist that rained back as glittering dust. Daenerys led the small company down crystal steps that rang like soft bells underfoot. Each note echoed outward and, to their surprise, flowers responded, petals unfolding wide, nodding gently, releasing motes of phosphorescent pollen that lingered in the air like lantern sparks. Harrag reached to catch one. It settled on his palm, pulsed a heartbeat, then dissolved with a sigh of warm breeze. Tyrion stopped to jot notes, though his quill quivered so badly he blotched half the page. Grey Worm walked point, spear ready, though the silence of this newborn world felt less like menace than reverent hush. Even so, he scanned each shadow, for war trains vigilance deeper than bone. The Moridi elder, her proper name was Araith, moved with eyes half-lidded, humming a low chord that made the grass ripple. She later explained her tribe used song to ask paths from spirits. In reply, the world offered ease of travel or thorns. Tonight, the grass bent neatly aside. They had not gone a mile before the first inhabitants appeared. Luminous beings no taller than a grown child, with elongated limbs and skin that seemed woven of moonlight. Their eyes were polished opals without pupil or iris, and at their backs hung veils of translucent membrane that flickered like dragonfly wings. They moved in swooping arcs, never quite touching earth, communicating in trills that resonated inside skulls rather than ears. Harag gasped, clutching his notebook. Tyrion lowered his voice. "If this is a dream, I demand no one wake me." The beings approached, hovering feet above the grass. One extended a slender hand. Daenerys answered by placing her open palm upward. Their fingers brushed warmth spread through her arm. A swift current of images. An egg in starlit sand, a hatchling's first cry, wind across endless waters, gates opening, new names whispered into stone. She understood without language that these people, whom she christened the Luviath, were guardians of thresholds, caretakers of journeys begun anew. The Luviath guided them toward a cluster of spires rising from the plain like lily stalks carved of smoky glass. Each tower curved, weaving around the next in a braided lattice. At their bases, pools of mirror water lay still as panes, reflecting constellations that did not exist above. A sky turned inward. Bridges arched across, built from spiraled root and whitest bone that humbly bore the traveler's weight. As they passed, the water in the pools shifted to show scenes of far-off seas. New York Sar's jungle shores, Drogon's circling basalt cliffs. A living map tethering past to present. Inside, the central spire halls opened like the inner chambers of an enormous nautilus. Walls undulated with slow color, echoing thought and emotion. When Tyrion whispered awe, the walls flushed a gentle amber. When gray worms suppressed suspicion, they cooled to steely blue. The Luviath paused before a dais grown from fused crystal. Upon it lay 3 bowls, one filled with water that smoked like morning breath, one with sand that glowed an inner gold, and one with seed husks the size of a dragon's eye, mottled ivory and dusk green. A wraith chanted. The Luviath answered with resonant hums. The bowls lifted into the air, rotating until water spilled to trace sigils that hovered midair. Sand sifted into swirling spiral. Seeds burst open, revealing tiny winged creatures that fluttered free, emitting peals like laughter. Daenerys felt the chambers widen inside her chest. More images poured through contact. Ships upon mirrored sea, dragons blazing at dawn, sickness quelled beneath jungle moon. The Luviath sought neither crown nor conquest. They offered invitation to weave stories with theirs. They gestured east, toward a pale scar of river crashing upward, coiling into aurora. Then west, where plains shivered beneath shimmering heat, as though flame burned beneath earth instead of above. Meaning crystallized. The world waited, unknown realms seeking names. That night, the Luviath prepared dwellings for guests. Rooms budding from the spire walls, shaped to each occupant's sleeping memory. Tyrion's chamber resembled a compact library in miniature, shelves arching overhead like tree limbs dotted with floating candles. Grey Worm's room manifested as quiet barracks lit by amber glow, polished spear racks, a water basin with gently singing surface. Harag's chamber brimmed with celestial instruments, astrolabes, sextants, glass lenses that revealed the skeleton of stars. Daenerys's quarters unfolded as a wide balcony opening onto moonlit infinity. Soft fur lay beneath feet, while pillars mimicked the curvature of Drogon's wings. In the center drifted a fireplace without hearth, flames spiraling in weightless plume. She stood there alone, memory pressing. Jon's face flickered in fire's dance, the shape of his sorrow, the earnest set of his jaw when he vowed no king could bind him to silence. She traced the scar on her thigh left by arrow at Meereen, felt ghost of crown once desired now turned to dust on wind. She whispered thanks to fates for delivering her here, to a world where ambition might reinvent itself as wonder. Before sleep claimed her, she stepped onto balcony rail. Out beyond and below, The plain rippled like silver cloth. Shadows of great beasts moved within grass, their outlines vast enough to dwarf elephants, yet their tread left no wake. Overhead, the copper moon eclipsed the green, painting horizon with molten eclipse. Drogon soared across that glow. She sensed the thrill of his journey, unfettered by gates. Regal and Viserion followed somewhere distant, forging sky paths new to them. 3 days the company dwelled among Luviath, listening to stories sung through images. They learned of 13 other sentient people scattered across this hemisphere. The Kithaerin, who sculpt time into crystal to store memory. The Vrela, whose cities floated in storms harnessed to coral spires. The Maurian, shapeshifters who carried dreams between minds like bees' fairy pollen. They learned the Luviath themselves were born of stardust congealed in places where void grew restless, drawn to threshold worlds to shepherd travelers. The Guardians spoke of a mystery deeper still, an inland sea at planet's core where reality thinned to thread, a mirror lake within mountain labyrinth. There, if one bore courage, lay something called the wellspring of being, where every path curled back to source, and dragons once drank to seed galaxies with flame. Many sought it, none returned unchanged. Daenerys considered these tales by fireless flame. Her heart yearned to ride horizons until Wellspring's song echoed inside bones. Yet she knew her companions were mortal, anchored by needs of flesh. The Luviath offered safe traverse. Crystals attuned to living essence, map seeds that germinated into routes only once, then dissolved. Guardians stationed along ley lines to mend broken will. But there was caution. The wellspring tested soul with hall of mirrors, each reflection a possible self unchosen. Daenerys convened council atop spire balcony so broad it could host a Dothraki Khalasar. Luviath perched upon air like perched swans. Grey Worm planted spear, Harrag clutched notes. Tyrion leaned upon rail swirling beaded drink fermented from moonvine. Every voyage asks price. Daenerys began, voice carrying. We stand upon world unshaped by iron thrones. We could build haven here, teach and learn, father children who will name moons in songs. Or we may press on, seeking wellspring, forging deeper unknown. I will not command either road. Each may choose. Harrag spoke first, surprising them with steady tone. When we left New York, Sar, you told me to be my own compass. Mine points farther yet. His cheeks flushed, the boy no longer boy. I sail. Tyrion sighed, tamped pipe he'd carved from translucent reed. A part of me longs for wine garden and tower where I might write histories in peace. Another part, louder, more impish, reminds me history is written by those who die of boredom last. The wellspring sounds delightfully lethal. I sail. Grey Worm's gaze drifted to horizon where flying leviathans breached swells of cloud. I swore to guard Sky Mother, he said softly. Not castle nor land. Wherever you tread, spear follows. A wraith placed her palm against chest in pledge. Moridi people, too, would walk threshold. Decisions solidified with sunrise. Luviath agreed to guide them to first ley lattice bordering desert where flame slept beneath dunes. There soared the oricline conduit, a ribbon of half-stone, half-light that functioned like river through air. Along its course they might reach spiral labyrinth at the heart of continent in moon's time. Preparations were unlike any they had known. Instead of timber and rope, the Guardians shaped hulls from petaled plates grown overnight from seed ore. These craft resembled longboats yet weighed less than hide-stretched rafts. Sails unfurled forged from spider silk, reflecting starlight such that night seemed day aboard decks. Provisions consisted of transparent lichen that provided water when crushed, breadfruit the size of fists grown sweet under triple moons, and nectar bulbs storing sun heat to warm bodies in frost. Tyrion called them impossible toys, while running palms along hull, but Awe softened his jest. Grey Worm drilled unsullied, now but 27 hearts after voyage's attrition, in silent exercise of spears tipped with stone from Wellspring's rumored banks, gifts of Luviath. Harrag pored over sky charts etched onto memory glass, each coordinate encoded by color pulses you must tilt to decipher. Daenerys passed final nights speaking with Drogon high upon Spire apex. He had feasted on thunderbirds that soared where lightning rings crowned peaks. Now he lay coiled, wings draped across parapets like storm-tattered banners. She pressed forehead to warm scales. "We go farther," she murmured. "Not all may return." Drogon blinked twin furnaces. Through their bond she felt his thrill. This world's breadth matched his longing sky. Fear of horizon did not afflict him. Hunger for it burned eternal. He craned neck and nudged her gently, a gesture like steadying wind beneath weak wings, telling her she bore flight within mind even if body grounded. At dawn they departed, 3 Luviath glidecraft joined by Drogon overhead. Regal and Viserion circled distant thermals but would shadow at intervals, unseen watchers beyond cloud. The conduit shimmered ahead, a road of white crystal twisting above ground by 30 feet, held aloft on pillars of humming vibration. When hull touched it, craft locked into groove and slid forward driven by Earth's own hum. No oars, no wind, just song of world-guiding pilgrims. Days on conduit passed in stately procession. Beside them desert unfurled, dunes of crushed ruby glittering under sunless noon. Light came from moons and from luminous sand itself. At night, if one could call any hour night, green moon dipped low revealing constellations shaped like long-necked beasts, warriors, and swirling vortex reminiscent of mirror expanse. They encountered wonders. Geysers of liquid crystal that solidified midair into sculptures before collapsing back to sand. Caravans of insectoid merchants riding beetles the size of drays, clicking mandible languages that Luviath answered in pheromone pulses. A valley where time slowed, footsteps drawn like paint in water, speech thick honey. Careful, they skirted its edge lest years pass within heartbeats. Each marvel added lines to Tyrion's growing manuscript. Pages now bound between covers of living bark that rearranged chapters depending on readers' focus. Harrag charted star shifts, recording minute gravitational swirl near Copper Moon hinting at unseen companion body. Grey Worm, though quiet, began to carve symbols upon spear shaft. One for each threshold crossed, each vow renewed. Their passage was not without peril. Once, beneath arch of basalt where conduit dipped, they saw shapes stalking dunes. Sleek predators with bodies of hammered obsidian, eyes glowing citron. Luviath called them shadehounds, conjured by resonance of wellspring to test travelers. Cane-thin legs carried them silently. Their cry, a chime like breaking glass, made weaker minds tremble. Unsullied formed phalanx atop craft, spears angled outward. Drogon came as living comet, flames white as newborn star, scattering shadehounds into shards that melted back into sand. Another trial came when conduit intersected a storm front. Clouds clashed like titans, spraying forks of blue lightning that sang notes low as cathedral bells. Electrical specters leapt to craft, dancing along railings in shapes of human skeletons wreathed in fire. Luviath guardians aboard emitted harmonic counterthrum. Waves of sound rippled outward, calming static, allowing convoy to sail through curtain of spark unscathed. Tyrion described it as passing through the throat of a celestial harp. On 59th day of conduit they reached Spiral Labyrinth, a canyon where walls corkscrewed inward for miles, etched with fractal glyphs that shifted under observation. Here conduit ended, melding into natural quartz causeway descending into canyon's throat. The air smelled of rain on hot stone though no storm in sight. Guardians warned. Within Labyrinth each traveler would walk alone for a stretch. Illusions conjured by wellspring memory would attempt to snare will. The rule: carry token of present, a tangible anchor, and speak its story when visions grew thick. Tokens varied. Tyrion chose his first quill, bent but serviceable. Grey Worm carried bone bead once given by Missandei. Harrag a piece of New York Sar tearfruit seed. Array the feather scale from Daenerys' cloak. Daenerys selected shard of volcanic glass carved from her buried dagger, retrieved secretly before departure from Island of Healing Herbs. They entered canyon single file. Walls towered overhead, rippling with metallic sheen. Soon fog rose, swirling with colors. One by one figures vanished around bends. Daenerys walked alone. Rock pooled with dull reflections of faces she once knew. Yora's stern devotion, Missandei's bright smile, Cersei's smirk curling like smoke. She ignored them. Deeper still, path forked into 3 identical spirals. At first door she glimpsed throne room of red keep, bells ringing, ash raining. Jon's blade moving in slow arc toward her chest. She tasted copper of betrayal. She closed eyes, touched volcanic shard. "I lay this ghost to rest," she whispered. Vision cracked, splintering into moths. Second path showed Myreen's pyramid rooftop, night air sultry. Dario's hand upon sword hilt offering empire of Sellswords. She smelled jasmine. She spoke. "The future requires no shackles of gold." Pyramid faded. Third spiral opened onto shore of mirror expanse. Here Jon stood again, but older, hair threaded with silver, no sword, only open palms. He said nothing, but his eyes pleaded absolution. She reached fragment of dagger. "Forgiveness is fertile ground," she murmured. A breeze lifted tide, and image became smoke curling upward.
Labyrinths widened, fog seemed.
She emerged into cavern lit by inner starlight. There the rest waited, some kneeling, some trembling. Tyrion wiped tears. Muttering about father's shadow turned into child's laughter. Grey Worm's shoulders shook as though he'd borne lifetimes between canyon walls. A wraith sang soft note of mourning. Before them yawned grandest gate yet. 2 curved obelisks arc over lake of obsidian water glowing from within. Above, rings of light spiraled downward like reversed whirlpool. In center of lake rose lotus larger than any castle keep, petals unfurling slower than breath. From its heart leapt a column of clear radiance stretching into heavens, wellspring of being. Luviath guides halted at shore. Beyond lay place only mortality could tread. Drogon circled high, reluctant to descend. Daenerys stepped to water's edge. It rippled outward with rainbow fractals. She turned to companions. "No vow compels you past this point," she said. Harrag answered by stepping beside her, notebook hugged to chest. "Stars wait," he said simply. Tyrion scowled at rods in shoulders to stiffen bravado. "I've come far enough that retreat would be waste of excellent anecdote." Grey Worm lifted spear. "To guard." A wraith placed palm on water, humming chord that opened stepping stones of light. They crossed in single file. Each step sank inches, then buoyed. Water beneath feet revealed visions within, galaxies swirling inside droplet, infancy of dragons coalescing from cosmic dust. The lotus tower's petals folded aside, revealing spiral ramp leading into core. Along walls ran auroras embodied, swirling across surfaces that had no substance. No heat, yet hearts raced. At summit waited empty dais save for hollow crystalline sphere. Insight struck Daenerys. Fill this sphere with own essence, to be measured, perhaps judged. She raised shard of volcanic glass, placed it within cavity. It melted to shadowy plume spiraling along interior. The sphere brightened, projecting swirling images onto petals. Her life rendered in 1,000 shards. Birth at Storm's End, Piet Pre's chained cages, Drogon's first flight, the day she chose westward path. Each memory refracted into possibilities, roads not taken. She watched her own self burn King's Landing, watched self abdicate to Jon, watched self die birthing child, watched self crown city of New York Tsar Queen of nothing. All variations beckoned, but none bound. Sphere pulsed, asking silent question. What truth anchors you? She drew breath, spoke aloud. I am the seed of fire carried by wind. I am the step forward, nothing more. Words wove into sphere, steady glow settling. Next, Harrag placed notebook. Pages fluttered, writing lifting as fireflies, swirling into core. Sphere shaped constellations unknown, naming them with laughter. Harrag grinned tears. Tyrion set broken quill. Ink spilled forming vineyards under lavender skies. Voices recited verses of wine and wit. Grey Worm laid bone bead. Echoes of children's songs filled chamber. A wraith added feather scale. Forest of New York Tsar shimmered, drooping seeds over wellspring. Radiance rose, column widening until entire lotus glowed. A hum poured through air. Music older than sound, vibration of creation renegotiating edges of being. Light lanced upward, splitting clouds, reaching dragons overhead. Drogon roared, pure exultation. And Dove, wings wreathed in white flame that did not burn. Regal, Viserion followed. They circled column, absorbing radiance. Scales shimmered, colors shifting to prismatic spectrum. Wellspring's song changed pitch. Path behind them reopened. A hush settled. Daenerys felt within chest a warmth that would never cool. A hearth built of starfire. She sensed the same glow in companions. Eyes brighter, backs straighter. No crown upon head, yet sovereignty wrestled entire cosmos. Luviath awaited on shore as travelers returned across lake, petals reclusing. Their leader, whose given name revealed as Serail, bowed. "You carry seeds of worlds now," voice chimed within minds. "Where you walk, horizon will bend to make room." Daenerys inclined head, gratitude spilling like dawn. "We came seeking wonder. We leave carrying its echo." She turned toward desert's edge where conduit continued west, beyond maps still unwritten. Drogon landed, wings furling, scales iridescent. She mounted, feeling hum of wellspring in every sinew. She called to companions. They boarded glidecraft renewed, eyes alight. Luviath chorused blessing. Sky answered with quiver of aurora-forming spiral, mark of path forward. Engines of crystal thrummed to life, sails unfurling yet again. Daenerys lifted arm, signaling departure. Drogon beat wings, lifting above convoy. Wind smelled of distant continents. She gazed across infinite plain, heart fierce calm. Forward still, the story unending would ride their shadows. They glided into lavender twilight, leaving Wellspring behind but carrying its fire in marrow. No throne followed, no chain, only widening frontier of possibility. So the Mother of Dragons sailed realms beyond realms, and every step pressed against horizon until horizon, sighing, surrendered and expanded. Another chapter in chronicle without final page, sung thereafter by Luviath, by Moridi, by children of New York Sar, and by moons themselves whispering to tides. And somewhere across seas of worlds, bells tolling in distant memory fell silent at last, yielding to hush of newborn galaxies breathing their first names beneath wings of dragons that flew on forever. Mist thinned, revealing the auricline conduit tapering into a hazy aperture where the desert's crimson sands surrendered to a plateau of vitrified obsidian. The glidecraft slowed of their own accord, crystal keels meeting molten glass with a gentle sibilance like snow on smoldering coal. Heat shimmered upward in wavering veils, yet when Daenerys knelt and pressed her palm to the black surface it felt no hotter than a forge long cooled, its latent fire banked but patient. Beneath the transparent glaze, embers pulsed, veins of incandescent orange that threaded the earth like arteries beneath skin. Drogon settled beside her, wings half-mantled as if shielding her from a furnace that was not there. Though she sensed his lungs working harder, tasted copper on the air, a mineral tang that promised storms unborn. They advanced across the plain single file, each step coaxing faint tonal vibrations from the ground. Tyrion observed that the pitch shifted with body mass. Grey Worm's tread drew a baritone hum, Harag's a bright tenor, Aerethus a lilting contralto. Daenerys' own footfalls produced a note neither high nor low but resonant, lingering longer than the rest. "A chorus of mass," Tyrion whispered, scribbling with spare quill now sharpened to half its length. "The earth composes in what key I know not, but it recognizes each of us by weight and will." She smiled to hear music of living stone shaping itself to their presence. It reminded her of the walls in the Luviath spire that colored to echo mood. At the horizon a structure materialized, first as distortion, then a ring of monoliths 8 in number, each towering twice Drogon's height. They leaned inward at impossible cant, their topmost edges kissing to form a perfect circle miles across, framing sky like the iris of a titan's eye. Within that circle suspended an orb of transparent quartz, large enough to swallow a castle's keep. Lightning flickered inside it, diffusing through lattices of crystal, casting latticework shadows that rippled across the ground. A thin waterfall of dust, Or was it light ground so fine it behaved as vapor? Cascaded from the orb's underside, pooling in a shallow dome that pulsed like a heartbeat. The Luviath drifted forward, their wings shimmering in the gloom cast by the orb. One reached to touch the dustfall. The particles responded by swirling upward, forming a helix that enveloped the Guardian, then unraveled back into the cascade, leaving the Luviath glowing with flickers of internal luminosity. As the company approached, the monolith nearest Daenerys chimed, a single toll reverberating through marrow. Runes ignited along its basalt flank, spelling neither Valyrian nor any tongue she knew, yet meaning bloomed unbidden. Here begins the sky wound. She tasted syllables in her mouth, though she had not spoken them, and wondered whether the monolith read minds or memories. The ground sloped upward into the dust dome. Their boots sank an inch with each stride, but the substance compacted beneath, offering spring rather than suction. Inside, sound dulled. Even Drogon's heavy breathing softened to a hush. The column of dust overhead poured without end, yet did not bury them deeper. Each grain found its place in a turning wheel of descent and ascent, a stasis achieved through perpetual motion. At the dome's heart rose a dais, and upon that dais floated a disk of obsidian no larger than a dining plate. On its mirror-dark face shimmered 8 sigils identical to those flaring on each monolith. They pulsed with slow cadence. When Daenerys extended her hand, the closest mark flared brighter. Harag whispered, "A map, or a lock." She lowered her palm until her fingers hovered over the glowing sigil. A resonance thrummed through her blood, synchronized heartbeat to heartbeat. She pressed. The disk dissolved into threads of light that leapt to the monoliths, and the orb overhead answered with a roar like wind funneled through caverns. Lightning inside the crystal globe intensified. Filaments bent, converging at a point directly above the dais. With crackling brilliance, a door opened. No frame, no threshold, simply absence of quartz forming a circular aperture into raging luminescence. Tyrion swore softly. If the wellspring was a cradle, this is the birth canal of stars. The opening widened, a spiral corridor inside the globe rotating clockwise. Steps formed of fused lightning, solidifying just long enough for a foot before dissolving behind. Daenerys felt a tug, not of air but of intention, drawing her upward. She turned to companions. Fear warred with elation in their eyes, yet none retreated. She ascended, and each step granted brief solidity, then vanished so no return existed. Inside the sphere, the atmosphere shimmered liquid, thick with ozone and something sweeter. Static raised hairs along arms. The corridor corkscrewed along the inner wall, offering panoramic view of a maelstrom of storm clouds trapped beneath the crystal's surface. Thunderheads pregnant with violet fire, hurricanes swirling within hurricanes, and through their vortices glimpses of something stranger. Fleets of ghost ships sailing inverted seas of cloud, schools of luminous leviathans breaching as if the storm were ocean. At midpoint, the path split into 8 radial branches, each leading to a platform suspended over emptiness. At the center of each platform levitated a single object. A feather wrought in copper, a cup carved from moss agate, a gear forged of ruby, a quartz hourglass turning its sand upward, a sphere of wood that burned without flame, a chain of linked bone segments flexing, a mask half black half mirror, and finally, a crimson gem shaped like a teardrop, its heart swirling with gold smoke. Daenerys's feet carried her toward the gem as if memory guided. She recognized within its swirl echoes of her dragon's fire. Even droplet folds evoked echo of dragon egg. When she reached, the gem lowered to float at eye level. Inside, smoke parted, revealing a vision. Jon kneeling on a frozen lake, offering a dagger carved of light, his eyes free of sorrow. Then the image flickered, showing New York SARS children chasing shards of starlight across white beaches. Flicker again. Drogon soaring through a nebula, wings alight with nebular flame. The gem pressed against her palm, warm. "Choose," whispered a voice she could not name. "Neither male nor female nor wholly human. Choose the road your fire will travel." She felt weight of decision but not dread. Wellspring's baptism had cleared fear like a lens wiped of grime. Lifted the gem, She closed fingers. A pulse spread outward, rippling through platforms. Companions likewise reached their objects. Tyrion the ruby gear, Harrag the hourglass, Grey Worm the bone chain, Araith the wooden fire sphere, Luviath guardians each an artifact. As objects settled into mortal hands, storm below stilled, flattening into calm plain of silver cloud. The spiral corridor straightened suddenly, converting into shoot of light that swept them upward in instantaneous surge. They emerged atop the sphere, standing on an invisible platform high above Monolith Ring. Wind whipped, but did not buffet. Lightning streaked dry across sky, etching lattices that remained burning in air before fading. The objects in hands floated free, orbited each bearer. Daenerys felt hers attuned to heartbeat. A phantom path unfolded before platform, steps of light coalescing mid-air, leading toward horizon where jagged mountains met swirling aurora curtains. Without spoken cue they followed, each step birthing the next. During march Tyrion discovered he could rotate his ruby gear. When teeth clicked into new alignment, wind direction altered to their favor. Harrag flipped his quartz hourglass. Each inversion slowed or hastened the motion of clouds overhead, altering shadows. Grey Worm twined bone chain around spear shaft. Links lengthened, blade glowing with pale fire. Daenerys experimented. Squeezing Gem, she called Drogon effortlessly. He banked mid-sky, answering in heartbeat. Gem echoed his roar back into her bones. Connection deeper than bond they'd shared before. Path carried them into mountains whose lightning rings parted like gates, each arc singing chords identical to hum of volcanic plain. Peaks bristled with crystal spines. Valleys held pools of liquid star metal bubbling lazily. They crossed rope bridges woven of condensed moonbeams, climbed switchbacks carved into cliffs by forces that seemed both natural and deliberate. Everywhere fractal sigils repeated, hinting the architect of Monolith Ring had shaped world entire. Perhaps not as ruler but as gardener. At length they reached plateau crowned by circle of columns, each column's capital carved into face of a different beast. Lion with wings, serpent with antlers, stag whose antlers blossomed into leaves, owlbear, long-necked hare, wolf with spiral horns, and dragon with eyes of void. At circle's center, a crystalline pool mirrored triple moons overhead. Its surface reflected not travelers but constellations unknown. Water radiated cold light. The Luviath guardians halted outside ring, their wings dimming, signaling this sanctuary belonged to new bearers of artifacts. Daenerys stepped first between columns. Air vibrated. Columns responded, faces tilting ever so subtly as if acknowledging. Gem tugged her toward pool. She knelt, extended Gem. It dropped, struck surface without splash, sank as though falling through mist, leaving ripple that refracted into swirling patterns matching monolith runes. One by one companions offered artifacts. Each sank silently, and with each sinking the pool brightened. When last object, the burning wooden sphere, descended, liquid erupted in column of starlight, enveloping ring, yet harmless. Light resolved into projection. Vast map of realm, its features floating midair, deserts, mirror seas, jungle moons, spires, labyrinth, wellspring, and beyond its borders blank parchment swirling, waiting. In map's center burned 8 glyphs matching artifacts, now arranged wheel-like around dark void. A crystalline voice thrummed, "The circle of 8 welcomes new custodians. Craft the pathways. Name the winds. Bind no chain but memory." Words imbued not command but invitation, and with them came knowledge on how to wield artifacts. The gear could sculpt currents, the hourglass govern temporal eddies, the gem coax flame to build or heal, the bone chain sew boundaries between dream and waking. Mask would negotiate with shadows, feather steer storms, chalice distill essence of plants to medicine, wooden sphere kindle life in barren ground. Tyrion whistled low. "We've acquired an armory suited to gods." Daenerys countered gently, "Or gardeners." She spread palm across map where New York SAR glowed miniature at world's rim. "We serve growth, not dominion." A hush of agreement circled. Then Grey Worm's expression shifted, listening internally. He reported small boom south, distant but approaching. Leaves of plateau trembled though no trees stood. Luviath wings flickered uncertain. Tyrion squinted west. Horizon showed dark smear climbing sky. Storm front swirling unnatural clockwise. Its core a spindle of black static. Aratheth's eyes widened. From her memory of Moridi lore, she named it a collar, devourer storm that erased color, leaving unpainted world where it passed. Guarded by none, it consumed realms left unmourned. Legend held only artifacts of 8 could redirect its path. A race commenced. The circle of columns parted. Platform extruded crystal walkway descending into gorge where winds already howled. Drogon descended with roar bigger than thunder. Daenerys vaulted upon his back even as Gem pulsed hotter, instructing breath of dragonfire to carry new signature. Gold-veined flame that mended what it touched. Harrag inched along walkway clutching hourglass. Tyrion spun gear, adjusting vector of crosswinds. Arath raised no object. Her hands wove songs summoning vines from stone to anchor columns lest storm shear them. A collar arrived like night unfurling early. Swirling funnel dragging color from world, bleeding crimson from sands into gray. Lightning of void crackled. Gray worm hurled bone chain into ground. Links anchored and expanded, forming net of pale fire across gorge. Vortex struck net, slowed, forced to swirl around barricade. Tyrion snapped gear quarter turn. Wind bellowed sideways, funnel's skirt redirected. Harrag flipped hourglass halfway. Time dilated, storm's rotation decelerated, giving Drogon chance to dive along funnel's flank trailing ribbon of golden fire. Flame licked vortex. Instead of combustion came bloom of radiant vines sprouting midair, roots stitching swirling mass, siphoning energy into blossoms that exploded as colored birds scattering chirps. A collar shrieked, voice of collapsing caverns, but guardians pressed. Chain tightened, gear rotated, hourglass bled seconds into centuries within Storm's heart until core collapsed inward, imploding into marble-sized pearl of darkness. It dropped onto plateau, twitching with residual hunger. Daenerys dismounted, approached, gem pulse directive. She touched pearl. It melted, releasing swirl of hues consumed, returning color to gorge in wave like dawn. Silence after chaos felt like cathedral hush. The land, once ash-gray, now glowed. Obsidian had veins of lilac, sands bleached not red but gradient glass powdered to pastel. Flowers unknown burst from cracks, each petal bearing fractal glyph. Luviath bowed, their voices chiming. Storm tamed, path secure, the 8 restore. Companions exhaled, adrenaline ebbing. Tyrion wiped brow with sleeve, muttering, "Well, that's an anecdote to season any vintage." Night fell though moons still soared. Columns dimmed. Pool absorbed map, leaving calm mirror. Daenerys gathered group inside ring. "We resisted unmaking," she said. "Artifact guidance kept worlds stitched. Custodians we are indeed. Yet duty extends beyond display. We must decide whether to remain guardians here or carry gifts home." Bridge New York Sar, Luviath Spires, Mirror Expanse, Wellspring. Storms wander where no custodians tread. Harag's eyes glimmered starlight. "Our world needs guardians too." Tyrion chuckled. "A metropolis of politics and petty crowns will quake at sight of us brandishing timeglass and dragon flame that heals. But perhaps quake is needed." Grey Worm spoke measured. "Unsullied left chains to walk horizon. If horizon circles back, we walk." Arath added, "Paths always home beckon. Seeds must return to soil." Decision formed like dawn behind eyelids. Daenerys ran fingers along gemstone's surface. Wellspring fire whispered, "Forward is not a direction but continuum." She envisioned portal between realms. Monolith ring as anchor, mirror expanse as reflecting gate, spires of New York Sar channeling threshold energies. Bridges could ferry knowledge, heal storms of her old world, bloodshed, famine, jealousy. "At sunrise," she declared, "we begin forge of road back. We will ask the sphere to carve channel. But first rest. Guardianship is marathon." They camped beneath columns, Drogon coiled sentinel round ring. Sleep came heavy yet woven with lucid dream. Daenerys found herself drifting above Westeros, kingdom painted in twilight. She saw Starks mending walls of Winterfell, Dornish children dancing on dune, small folk planting in fields watered by tears of melted snows. No iron throne overshadowed. In its courtyard dragons nested, teaching fledglings to chase clouds, not crowns. Vision settled into heart as blueprint. Morning arrived in hush of amber sunrise. Each artifact bearer discovered their tool had changed. Tyrion's gear developed second ring of teeth, granting finer control. Harag's hourglass now counted not grains but constellations slowly sliding. Grey Worm's chain sprouted luminous buds along links. Daenerys's gem no longer swirl but steady glow, stable heart of hearth. They assembled beneath orb, which recognized their intent and lowered walkway back into its interior. At dais 8 sigils awaited sockets. One by one they placed artifacts. Will turned, each emblem lighting. Sphere vibrated. Storm visions within coalesced to reveal mirror expanse, monolith ring, New York Sar jungle, wellspring, circle of columns. Nodes now connected by lines of silver radiance, forming network of gates. A voice, older than earlier, layers of timbre, filled sphere. The path of home is cut, bearings fixed on origin of memory. An aperture opened beyond dais, revealing swirling corridor identical to first but tinted aquamarine. Air smelled of brine and jungle blossoms simultaneously, signature of New York Sar. Daenerys glanced to companions, saw resolution. They withdrew artifacts, sphere stabilized network. Drogon circled overhead eager for return flight. A wraith would accompany, carry Moridi wisdom. Luviath emissaries volunteered to maintain circle. Farewells exchanged, soft, luminous. The convoy retreated, descending spiral of light, crossing obsidian plain now verdant with new life birthed from storm's remains. At Monolith Ring they boarded glidecraft. Conduit reconstituted, aligning south toward mirror expanse. Gear rotated, path accelerated, hourglass shifted days into hours. Bone chain cast shield against stray A-collar echoes. Gem kept sails strong. They traversed desert, labyrinth, jungles, each landscape now greeting guardians as kin. Mirror expanse lay placid. Its barrier parted before company, acknowledging artifacts' authority. Ships skimmed surface like swans upon polished marble. Approaching portal to New York Sar, they found settlement grown. Plank houses now stilted over lagoon, watchtowers woven from palm. Children raced along causeways. Gray sails dotted harbor. Grey Worm stood at prow, breath catching as he spied unsullied standard flying beside reed cloak banner. Drogon trumpeted. Settlement erupted cheers. When ships docked, crowds thronged, eyes wide at artifacts, at dragons radiant with unknown light. Daenerys stepped onto pier bearing gem shining like captured dawn. Luviath, having traversed portal ahead, directed weaving of crystalline vines between spires. Within weeks ring of columns echoed circle far realm, ready to shoulder gateway. On dedication day the artifacts slotted into island dais. Sky crackled with aurora over tropic sea. Gate shimmered into being, a disk of liquid light suspended between columns, reflecting both New York Sar and Obsidian Plateau. Through aperture watchers glimpsed circle, guardians saluting from far side. Cheers rolled. Daenerys addressed assembly again, gem held high. This door opens two ways, she said. One path leads outward, for those who crave dawn beyond dawn. The other leads home, reminding wanderers of hearth behind them. Keep both open. Protect neither with blades but with welcome. Crowd roared assent. Over months network expanded. Another gate raised near Mirror Expanse Whirlpool. Shadehounds tamed by bone chain patrols guarded perimeters. Lightning storms harnessed by ruby gear-powered sky beacons guiding ships. Time eddies smoothed by hourglass allowed crops to ripen twice season, banishing hunger. Yet challenges persisted. A rogue A-collar split, fragments slipping through Mirror Gate, threatening New York Sar's jungles. Daenerys and Drogon met at mid-flight, golden flame weaving net with chain. Vine sapling now tree channeled storm energy into root, blossoming thousand lantern fruits. In quiet evenings Daenerys walked beaches, watched children chase luminous crabs that wrote runes in sand. She thought of Westeros, distant but not forgotten. The gem sometimes trembled, suggesting another road home to 9 kingdoms. She envisioned ring of columns on Dragonstone cliffs, portal through which knowledge of healing fire could replace charred rubble of old conflicts. She would go, but not yet. Seeds here still young. Years unfolded like tide. Harrag matured into cartographer of thresholds, mapping constellations that guided gate placement. Tyrion's histories grew into living archives rendered in crystal holographies, retelling Age of Fire with nuance gleaned from vantage of stars. Grey Worm trained first generation of guardians, volunteers from many peoples, sworn to wield artifacts echo in service of balance. Arathis trees spread along coastline, their heatless light luring migratory birds with feathers that wove strongest sailcloth known. Daenerys, though uniged beyond ordinary years, felt transformation internal. Crownless queen now steward of cosmos avenues. One dawn she stood upon Anchor Spire as third moon faded into sunrise. Drogon landed behind, nuzzling shoulder. She spoke softly. Soon we cross sea of stars again, back to snows and songs of north. We bring no armies, only doorways. Drogon's answering rumble tasted of approval. She turned toward horizon where day met water, gem shimmering at her breast. She inhaled salt, exhaled promise. Forward remained anthem, not destination. Path unfurled beneath each stride, rewriting maps. Thus began next chapter. Daenerys Stormwanderer, mother of gateways, forging peace between worlds beyond thrones. Tales of her voyage spread through New York Sar and forests of Moridi, across skies of Luviath, whispered into wells of desert caravans. Children fell asleep to stories of storm taming and songs of rings, and in dreams they walked with dragons along lit paths, carrying seeds of possibility. Centuries hence, chroniclers would debate where myth ended and flesh began. But on that morning, when light first touched gate of Dragonstone newly raised by unseen artisans, a silver-haired woman and her black-winged companion stepped through, bearing gem heart of starfire, ready to invite old realm into dawn unimagined. Her footsteps rang on ancient volcanic rock, bells of kings landing silent at last. Snowflakes melted in golden flame curling harmless upon parapets. Jon, older, stood waiting, eyes no longer burdened by regret but widened by awe. Between them stretched history, storms, horizons. Yet Gem pulsed gentle, bridging sorrow. She smiled and spoke single word taught by Luviath that meant both greeting and renewal. Forward, he whispered back, and in that instant 2 worlds, one always destined, one self-forged, echoed each other, and the road ahead opened to every heart willing to walk beyond fear. A hush settled over the cliffs of Dragonstone as the gate's afterglow faded into mist, leaving only the soft rasp of the sea against black stone. The morning's first light draped the castle in a mantle of rose, revealing salt-slick battlements unchanged by the years. Yet everything beneath them felt altered, as though the island itself were drawing a new breath. Daenerys stood with the gem's steady warmth throbbing against her breastbone, Drogon's shadow vast at her back, and watched Jon Snow cross the causeway with measured steps. Wind curled his dark hair against the collar of a weather-faded cloak. The wolf's head clasp gleamed silver, but its furrows bore the gentle erosion of time. No trumpets, no banners, no steel-shod guards preceded him. He came alone, save for the spirit of the North in his quiet tread and the memory of a promise spoken long ago beneath collapsing kingdoms. When he halted before her, eyes lifting, she saw winter and thaw together, grief distilled into something calmer, something that might one day name itself hope. She inclined her head a fraction, unwilling to break the fragile stillness with ceremony. "You crossed a sky no map can trace," he said, voice husky from salt wind, "and returned. I followed the horizon until it yielded," she answered, each word tasting of sea and remembered stars. "I bring no claim, only a door." Jon's gaze flicked past her to the gate's faint shimmer, where Tyrion and Harrag supervised the unloading of crystal crates, and Grey Worm drilled a ring of Unsullied with spears crowned in pale fire. The boy from New York Sar chased a Cothern dragonfly across the rampart, its wings pearlescent in dawn. "There are lords who will see threat in every glint of that light," he warned. "Cersei's echoes linger still. Fear will be their first counsel." "Fear is a habit," she said. "We shall teach a new one." She extended her hand, palm up. Not command. Invitation. For one heartbeat he hesitated, memories of ash and tolling bells passing like ghosts between them. Then his gloved fingers brushed hers, warmth meeting warmth. The gem pulsed, a soft chord that rippled outward. The banners strung along battlements fluttered in sudden updraft as though acknowledging covenant. Somewhere below, the sea murmured its eternal refrain. They gathered that evening in the Crackstone Hall beneath Dragonstone's great spiral stair, a place once echoing with the whispers of secret councils. Now lanterns of untiring vines cast gentle bronze light over a table shaped days earlier by the gem's fire. Obsidian fused with translucent crystal so that maps shone inside it like veins of living topography. Around its rim sat emissaries more varied than any Westeros had seen. Tyrion Lannister, quill poised beside a cup of arbor gold. Sansa Stark, her hair touched with new streaks of white wisdom. Gendry Baratheon, smith's shoulders broader than any lord's. Davos Seaworth, fingers tracing his rough beard. Grey-cloaked Arya, silent at the margin. Samwell Tarly bearing a tome of histories. Harrag hunched over star charts. Grey Worm, spear-haft across knees. A wraith of the Moridi in featherscale. Cloak. Two Luviath guardians hovering near the vault's curved ceiling like living constellations. Jon stood beside the table's northern arc, hand resting on pommel of a plain sword. Daenerys took the southern arc, gems glow reflected in the obsidian surface between them. Tyrion broke silence first, clearing his throat. 100 years from now, minstrels will curse our names for meeting without preamble. He glanced around. "Shall we begin with simplest question? Why?" Daenerys answered, voice even. "To heal storms before they are born. To weave gates where swords once rose. To share the fire that mends." Sansa's expression remained guarded, yet curiosity softened her brow. Fire mends, and who decides what is mended? North remembers scars of southern cure. Her words gentle, but steel hidden beneath. Daenerys inclined her head. "Not I alone. Custodians chosen by path itself, guide flame. 8 artifacts balance one another. No single hand may wield will entire." She gestured to companions. Ruby gear rested before Tyrion. Hourglass by Harrag. Bone chain curled beside Grey Worm. Feather, mask, chalice, sphere arranged among other custodians. Sam's eyes shone. These objects, they reshape natural laws? "In tune with them," Harrag said, excitement tripping syllables. "Gear steers wind currents. Hourglass bends local temporal flow. Chain edges dream from waking. Gem shapes life flame." Gendry folded arms. "Could such power forge weapons?" Grey Worm answered, voice low. "Only if wielder's heart fractures from path. Chain binds echoes of nightmares. Turned inward it would break mind of bearer before blade touched foe." He looked to Daenerys. "Custodianship is burden, not crown." Davos leaned forward, weather-cracked hands clasped. "Well's enough, but small folk won't sleep easier for talk of burdens. They'll want bread, not storms." He tapped table. "Can your flame mend fields after drought? Heal plague?" Daenerys met his gaze. "Yes, but only with keepers across realm. Gates must root in soil of every kingdom, else currents fail." Jon's fingers drummed sword hilt, thoughtful. "Lords may balk at pillars glowing in their keeps. We must show, not tell. Begin where need greatest." Sansa's arms relaxed. "North's harvests thin last winter. Show Winterfell green returned and words will spread faster than ravens." She looked at Daenerys, hint of wry smile. "But step carefully. My people cast long shadows of memory." Daenerys nodded, accepting weight. I will come as guest, not queen. The word tasted strange. Once ambition, now artifact of older self. She turned to Tyrion. We craft portable gate seeds. How soon? The dwarf considered gears turning teeth. If we repurpose fragments of mirror expanse crystal among New York sarvines, perhaps a moon's work. But we need artisans who dream sideways, smiths of sound, weavers of heat. His gaze swung to Gendry. Your forges still burn? Hotter than ever, Gendry said, pride flickering. Storms and hammers stand ready. Then we begin, Daenerys said. Arya spoke for first time, voice like distant chime. Not all shadows will welcome dawn. Word of gates will reach those nursing embers of war. Crows gather on walls unseen. Luviath guardians' wings fluttered silver accord. Where fear feeds, storms bud. Custodians must move swift. Jon's jaw tightened. Let fear come. We'll meet it with bridges, not oil. Work unfolded at breathless pace. Dragonstone's lower workshops, once storerooms for wildfire caches, filled with rings of sea stone under gem heat. Vines coaxed from Moridi seeds curling through molten fissures. Gendry forged housings from star iron hammered in rhythm guided by Tyrion's gear, each strike turning hammer spark into living note of alloy. Harrag studied sky over Dragonstone, measuring third moon's waver and adjusting quartz angles. Grey Worm drilled mixed cadre of Unsullied and Northern volunteers, teaching form of spear flow tempered by Bone Chain's ghost flame. Shields woven from dreams stitched into waking, able to deflect intangible dread that seeped wherever a collar seeds might sprout. Sansa returned north with a Wraith and 2 Luviath to survey Winterfell's failing fields. Daenerys followed a week later astride Drogon, landing in the Godswood where Heart Tree's red leaves shivered beneath his wing shadow. Bran the Broken, now seer more than king, waited beneath Weirwood's face, eyes white with visions. He greeted Daenerys not with blame but with quiet nod, as though he had watched her steps across galaxies and found them part of pattern older than root and star. Under Bran's guidance, gem fire warmed soil chilled by sour frost left from unnatural winter. Feather artifact summoned winds rich with sky seeds. Chalice distilled sap from Moridi glow trees, dripped into irrigation streams, reviving limp stalks. Within 7 days shoots of barley broke frozen crust. Within 14, blossoms of colors unseen in North's history opened like promises renewed. Small folk approached fields at dawn and wept, kneeling to cradle petals. Word leapt from holdfast to holdfast, carried on wildling drums across the wall's breached scars, borne by ravens to veil, reach Dorne. At King's Landing, still rebuilding from ashes, new small council convened, faces pinched between curiosity and dread. Ser Bronn of the Blackwater grumbled about tolls lost on grain trade if every field sprouted miracles. Ser Davos, appointed hand to Queen Sansa in her absent tours, countered that healthy realm buys more spices. The debate turned when a messenger from Storm's End brought tale of Smith Forge's birthing crystal rings that hummed songs into swords until edges glowed with harmless light, gifting harvest when plunged into soil. Citizens began to speak of dragon gates not as weapons but as gifts. Cersei's old partisans, skulking in disrobed grandeur, muttered of witch queen illusions. Yet when a single gate sprouted in Flea Bottom's market square, a miniaturized ring no higher than a man's shoulders, bucket carriers found the putrid well beside it cleared overnight, water sparkling like mountain spring, disease evaporating. Skepticism faltered, but shadows do not yield all at once. In the Riverlands, a sect calling itself the Unburnt Remnant rose beneath crimson banners bearing silhouette of destroyed Red Keep. They preached that Daenerys' return heralded second cleansing, that gates were dragon maws waiting to swallow souls. Enraged by field miracles they deemed sorcery, they began torching gate seeds before they rooted, capturing Luviath scouts and stringing them from drowned willows. Their leader, a gaunt septon named Maribald Clay, wore around his throat a bell made from melted crown fragments, ringing it at rallies in mocking echo of King's Landing's doom. Reports filtered north. Tyrion slammed fist on map table so hard quills bounced. Always someone ringing bells, he snarled, voice cracking with old wounds. Harrag paled. Grey Worm's jaw tightened like drawn bow. Daenerys listened, gem dim in her palm. The memory of bells no longer seared, but smoldered with caution. "We meet words with sight, not flame," she said. Jon volunteered to ride south with Envoy. Arya vanished that night, leaving Feather on Daenerys's windowsill, silent sign she would shadow unseen. Envoy approached Riverrun under banner of entwined spirals. Villagers lined roads, some cheering, others clutching talismans of faith. On third day they reached camp of unburnt remnant, tattered tents surrounding charred husk of half-grown gate. Septon Clay stood upon broken arch preaching ruin. Jon stepped forward, cloak swirling winter dust. Clay's bell rang once, twice. "Behold, the wolf consorts with dragon again," he cried. "Did winter's lash not teach you hunger enough? These gates will open jaws of sky to swallow men's hearts." Jon's voice carried calm steel. "This land starved while you rang fear. Look east. Field Sarah thrives on grain healed by gates abroad." He pointed to wagons behind Envoy, sacks of barley, jars of medicine distilled by chalice's sap. "Seed, not steel," Clay spat. "Temptation. Miracles always demand tithes. First your coin, next your will, last your soul." At signal, gray worms cadre opened crates, luminescent saplings thrumming gentle chords of life. Unsullied lowered spears, butts planted in soil. Chain unfurled, weaving dreamlight shield above crates, protecting from missile or flame. Villagers standing beyond remnants not watched, drawn by light. A child slipped past line, touching sapling's leaf. It unfurled into bloom that released fragrance of home-baked bread. Murmurs spread. Clay's bell rang frantic. Arrow loosed from remnant bowman streaked toward child. Mid-air it struck invisible lattice of chain's dream barrier and dissolved into petals. Gasps rose. Jon spoke low. "Storms come from fear. We tame storms." He held out palm. Gem pulsed in Daenerys's distant echo. Soil under sapling parted, root gaining hold. Flower seeds scattered on breeze, landing among trampled grass to sprout lavender shoots within minutes. Remnant line faltered. Some dropped weapons, tears staining ash-smudged cheeks. But Clay screamed, raising torch doused in pitch. Before he could hurl, Shadow stepped behind. Arya's dagger flashed silver. Torch fell, sputtering harmless. Clay crumpled, bell clattering hollow on fractured arch. Silence drowned field. Arya faded back into watchers. Her voice carried only to Jon's ear. "Fear has many masks. Cut one, others sprout. Keep knife ready." Then she was gone again. Jon ordered remnant disarmed but unharmed, offered bread from healing grain. Many accepted, weeping. Gates sprouted anew, root protected by villagers who once doubted. Word of confrontation traveled faster than rumor, borne by Luviath's songlines that resonated through gate network. Within fortnight, resistance diminished. Bells lost luster without hands to ring them. Seasons turned with new rhythm. Winterfell's fields yielded second harvest before first snow. Iron Islanders eager for profit petition to host gate on Pike's Stormlash cliffs. Gear steered gales, enabling fleets to sail thrice each month. Dornish water gardens bloomed luminous fruit that cooled fever of sand plague. Citadel lifted ban on unnatural arts. Opening wing dedicated to threshold studies under Archmaester Samwell's oversight. Star-wrinkled texts from Tyrion-filled shelves. Still, guardians remained vigilant. A collar pockets flickered near Stormlands. Shadehound illusions stalked broken arm custodian teams, rotated across realm, artifacts humming. Harrag, grown into maprite of horizons, charted new gate lines, one toward Summer Isles, another planned for far east across Bone Mountains. Daenerys split her days between New York Sar, now bustling starport of worlds, and Westeros anchor sites, riding Drogon whose scales gleamed kaleidoscope. She did not sit throne. She walked markets, taught children star stories, knelt beside sickbeds to warm cold hands. Some hailed her queen regardless. She smiled, let words pass like breeze. On dawn marking 5 years since return, Bran summoned her to Winterfell's Godswood. Snow dusted branches, The weirwood's face bled crimson sap slow as heartbeat. Bran's blind gaze pierced beyond seasons. "Storm greater than a collar stirs," he said. "A wound in fabric where gates splice too thin. Balance demands tether else we've unravel." Daenerys listened, gem dulling. "Where?" "In the lands beyond Jade Sea, where Karth once plotted Starport for its profit," Bran murmured. "They cut without understanding. A void creeps." She recalled Karth's smug traders, thirsting for spectacle. "We will mend." Bran shifted, ivory fingers grazing root. "Cost will weigh even on dragons, but path chooses walkers." His eyes cleared, he smiled faint. "Tell Jon he still owes me game of Syvas." That night Daenerys convened custodians at Dragonstone's hall. They studied Bran's prophecy. Map within obsidian table now flickered with rip near Jade Sea. Pulse of darkness. Tyrion traced outline. If rift widens, gate lattice will destabilize. Storms could swallow seas. Harrag estimated horizon calculus. Vein lines converge there. Natural fault. We anchor new circle inland to relieve strain. Grey Worm volunteered vanguard. A wraith prepared vines. Lu. Vyeth ready to shepherd. Jon insisted on accompanying, though North needed him. He would not let her face shadow alone. She agreed. Drogon carried them east, followed by fleet of glidecraft. They crossed Dothraki Sea, now dotted by stone ring gates where nomads traded meteor glass for healing brew. Further east, desert shimmered where Karth's towers once glittered, now half buried by shifting dunes. At its center yawned wound, spiral pit of midnight, swallowing sand in slow vortex. Around rim, shattered obelisks, failed imitation of monolith ring, crackled sickly purple arcs. Daenerys dismounted, gem throbbing alarm. Tyrion's gear squealed, misaligned by disrupted currents. Hourglass inverted spontaneously, time loops causing sand eddies freeze midfall. Shadehound apparitions prowled near fissure. They established encampment outside distortion radius. Chain erected dreamwall holding illusions at bay. Harrag deployed sextants measuring rift spin. Calculations confirmed expansion each hour. They had days at most. Araith and Moridi seedlings sought anchor points, but sand refused root. Luviath attempted resonance lullaby. Void swallowed notes. Drogon's roar diffused, soundless near center. Despair pulled edges of resolve. Night fell, and with it Acollar fractals birthed from pit, swirling overhead. Guardians fought exhaustion. Chain repelled first wave, gem mended ground temporarily, but for every wound closed two opened. Jon approached Daenerys at brink where sand cascaded into black. "Storm bigger than us," he said, squinting into abyss. "Need more fire." She gazed at gem, heart of starfire beating with her pulse. She remembered Wellspring's column, circle of 8, path of home. Perhaps time to sacrifice seed to heal parent tree. She called council at dawn. Gem is hinge. Rift hungers for hinge's absence. If gem enters void, equalizes lattice, but I may not return. Faces paled. Tyrion slammed gear. "We lost too many queens to pyres of destiny. There must be other cracks to wedge shut." Harrag voice shook. "Maps show second fault under mirror expanse. Remove gem, both collapse."
Aratese vinecluac rust led grief.
Root cannot grow if mother seed torn. Grey Worm met Daenerys' eyes. Unsullied guard, but cannot guard this. His voice low prayer. Jon's hand covered hers. "I followed you across stars to build home, not bury you in sand." Pain carved his words. She lifted their joined hands. "Storm of Thrones once took my fire for ruin. I borrowed it back to heal. If price returns, I pay smiling." She pressed gem into his palm briefly. Warmth surprised him. Flame mends not self but garden. Jon knew argument futile against horizon in her gaze. He asked only, "Then let me stand at edge beside you." They prepared ritual. Luviath traced spiral runes, hourglass fixed at zero flow to stall rift for final moment. Gear aligned vortex orientation. Bone chain anchored dream wall. Feather steered last calm breeze. Chalice distilled sap onto gem, enrobing in living light. Daenerys donned cloak of feather scales shimmering dawn colors. She approached precipice. Drogon lowered head, crooned broken note. She pressed forehead to his snout. "Fly high," she whispered. "Guard sky." He bellowed grief and rose, circling like black sun. She stepped forward. Sand gave way beneath, but chain shot dream plank, supporting until moment. She turned to companions, smile soft. Forward. Eyes full of stars, she leapt. Gem flared gold, swallowing her form. She became streak of meteoric fire plunging into void. Pit blazed, swallowing light. Thunder without sound rippled across dunes. For breathless instant nothing moved. Then vortex reversed, spitting geyser of color skyward. Shards of shattered obelisks knitted, spiraling into new ring. Sand fused to crystal plate beneath watchers' feet, forming dais etched with 8 sigils. Rift sealed. Void pearl drifted upward, smaller than fist, settling onto dais center. Where Daenerys stood, no body remained, only featherscale cloak folded as by gentle hands. Silence broke in wails. Aretha's song of mourning, Grey Worm's spear striking ground thrice. Tyrion collapsed to knees, tears lost in beard. Jon sank beside Cloak, clutching cloth to chest, broken wordless. But Cloak pulsed faint. Feather scales spiraled apart, twisting into column of warm mist. It coalesced into silhouette, Daenerys reborn, skin aglow with quiet starshine, gem now embedded at center of her breast, yet no longer distinct stone. Fire fused to her heart. Eyes opened, silver irises flecked with gold. Jon's breath shuddered. She knelt, cupped his cheek. "Storm repaid," she murmured, voice unchanged, yet undernote of cosmic chord. "I am custodian made vessel, path embodied." Tyrion laughed through tears. "Of course you out-bargained oblivion." She rose, cloak forming wings of light that folded against shoulders. Dais beneath erupted vines that rooted instantly, ring stabilizing. Luviath bowed. Chain links bloomed. Harag's hourglass resumed normal flow. Daenerys addressed guardians. Gem no longer singly born. Flame now part of weave no theft can sever. Gates anchored. She glanced upward where Drogon hovered expectant. He roared joyous. "We return home." Years unwound like bright ribbon. Gate network laced continents. Storms tamed. Famine stories told only in mead halls. Custodianship passed to new generation guided by 8. Harag training star sentinels. Grey Worm leading Dream Guard. A wraith seeding Lightwoods across Dorne. Tyrion chronicling living saga titled Thresholds of Dawn. Volumes etched in floating crystal accessible through any gate. Jon remained at Dragonstone, warden of Crossroads, advising realms without crown. He and Daenerys walked beaches at dusk, barefoot, discussing ships of refugees welcomed through New York SARS port, disputes settled by dream arbitration, children's drawings of dragons weaving auroras. One twilight, bells tolled in King's Landing, not alarm but celebration. 10th Harvest Festival of Gate Era. Daenerys and Jon attended incognito, wandering stalls where bakers sold starfruit tarts, smiths hammered dreamsteel trinkets. A young girl tugged Daenerys' cloak, offering carved wooden dragon. "For the lady who rides Comet," she said shy. Daenerys knelt, accepted gift, thanked her. Gem in her chest warmed as child ran, laughter trailing. Later they climbed Hill of Rainies where old September once stood. Ruins now garden of whispering grasses. Gate ring framed sunset melting into sea. Jon took Daenerys' hand, gaze on horizon. "You gave world doors," he said, "but kept one for yourself?" She smiled, eyes reflecting suns not yet born. "Horizon always recedes. We chase together." He squeezed fingers. Wind carried scent of spiced wine, blossoming trees, distant ocean. Drogon roost on Gate's arch, wings mantling twilight. She leaned into Jon's shoulder. He rested head against silver gold hair. In hush between heartbeats they felt realms breathe in unison. New York SAR surf, Winterfell pines, desert stars, storm-tamed dunes. Path forward stretched eternal, but for a moment they stood still, content in knowledge that moving again would mean carrying this stillness onward, leaving prints of peace across uncharted sand. Night arrived. They stepped through gate, silhouettes merging with starlight. Behind them bells sang, not warning, but promise. Across doors wrought by dragon fire and shepherded by human hands, tomorrow waited, wide as sky wound healed, bright as sapling blooming under triple moons. And always, wherever thresholds opened, children would point at first glimpse of dragon's shadow soaring overhead and whisper one word learned in languages new and old: forward.